Chapter 398. The overall commander of the Carey fleet was outside Keen Prison. He relayed the information of the current situation to Luo Nan, who was on planet Kree. Luo Nan replied coldly without losing his domineering aura. Push the spaceship forward. Force the new Star Corps to hand over the Universal Orb. Otherwise they will welcome the wrath of the Kree in a war that will engulf the entire galaxy. Yes. The spaceship commander accepted the order. He had just ended the video call with Luo Nan and had yet to give the order to push forward when the Vanguard spaceship suddenly sent back a message. Sir, our radar has detected an unidentified flying object. It's currently flying towards us at high speed. The commander spoke coldly. Do I need to give the order for it to dare approach our Carey spaceship? Push forward and open fire. Blast that flying object into space dust. Understood. The engines of over 100 pitch-black and ice-cold spaceships rumbled as they ignited. This army was large enough to flatten a planet's civilization. They pushed forward in a dark mass. The Vanguard spaceship at the very front had countless cannons lined up in a row. They fired interstellar missiles the size of fighter jets. There was an extremely dazzling speck of stars on the other side of the target. It was flying close to the speed of light towards the spaceship. It was Kale himself. This was his first time flying at light speed in outer space. He only felt his mind stir, and the star belts and planets on both sides of his body blurred and retreated behind him at high speed. Kale, surrounded by dazzling light, looked forward. His enhanced eyesight could extend to thousands of kilometers away. He could clearly see the incoming interstellar missiles and the fleet of spaceships behind them. I'll use you guys to test my skills first. Kale held his breath and circulated his merged energy to its peak. His palm was covered in a dazzling radiance. He didn't dodge the incoming interstellar missiles. Rumble, rumble. A series of unprecedented explosions suddenly erupted in the pitch-black outer space, covering an area of several hundred kilometers. The flames ignited a small corner of the Milky Way universe. This is the result of provoking the Kree. The commander stood in the command room of the giant spaceship. He sneered as he admired the spectacular explosion through the transparent floor-to-ceiling window. But suddenly, a dazzling speck of starlight shot out from the explosion at extreme speed. It continued to approach the spaceship courageously. What is that? The commander was stunned. In the command communication channel, the scout in the Vanguard anxiously replied, Sir, the unidentified flying object is still approaching. Through detection there are signs of life. It's a humanoid organism. What did you say? The commander's eyes widened in shock. A living organism flying in outer space. He even endured the indiscriminate bombardment of interstellar missiles? The commander didn't have time to think. The star that looked like a cursor had already approached the front of the fleet. It didn't show any signs of stopping. Instead, it accelerated and crashed directly into the Vanguard battleship. Boom. When the fusion energy touched the battleship slightly, the steel deck was instantly penetrated and melted. The stream of light entered the front cockpit of the battleship, pierced through layers of steel plates, and finally rushed out from the engine at the back of the battleship. Guard Carey's horrified voice sounded from inside the battleship. Before he could see the enemy's face clearly, the battleship exploded into a raging fireball after a violent tremor. Countless parts and alien corpses flew out. Kale stopped above the battleships and looked down coldly. His eyes seemed to have passed through countless battleships and landed on the commander on the extra-large spaceship. Seeing this, the commander couldn't help but roar, Damn it, return fire. Blast him into smithereens. Hundreds of interstellar battleships immediately locked onto Kale and raised their cannons. This scene was like a high-pressure cannon killing a mosquito. It was so strange and spectacular that it was shocking. Just in time. Kale smiled coldly. He lowered his body and flew down. He raised his hand and fired a fusion energy hand cannon. A burning beam of light swept across space. An interstellar missile exploded right after it left the cannon, causing a few battleships around it to be heavily damaged and sink. Kale seemed to be dissatisfied with this efficiency. He sped up and used both his hands to block an interstellar missile that was flying towards him. He blocked it with his bare hands and pushed the interstellar missile towards the fleet of interstellar battleships. Countless battleship pilots steered their spaceships away in shock. For a moment, it was like a tiger had entered a flock of sheep. Kale was the only wolf, and the interstellar battleships were one-sided sheep. In the following time, Kale completely demonstrated the superhuman power of fusion energy. He flew at the speed of light and ignored the energy shield of the interstellar missile bombardment. This allowed him to be fearless of the huge fleet of interstellar battleships. The amazing power of fusion energy allowed him to deal a catastrophic fatal blow to the interstellar battleships and spaceships. On this day, the aliens in Keen Prison and New Star could see the endless fireworks in the sky when they looked up. It was as if a salute was being set off in the sky. Few people knew that every firework lit up represented the explosion and destruction of an interstellar battleship. Demon, he is a star demon. The Kree battleship channel, from the beginning of Kale's attack, had been filled with cries for help and screams. The commander on the rear spaceship looked at the wreckage and corpses of the battleships in front of him. His body began to tremble, and finally he couldn't help but give the order to retreat. The Kree battleships wanted to retreat, but it didn't mean that Kale would let it go. After dismantling a battleship with fusion energy, Kale looked up and saw that most of the surviving battleships began to retreat at high speed. He narrowed his eyes and locked onto the large interstellar battleship among them. Trying to run? Kale smiled and suddenly accelerated, turning into a stream of light. He ignored the ordinary spaceships and approached the interstellar spaceship that seemed to be the command center. Beep beep beep, warning, warning, enemy target is approaching. The commander's expression changed when he heard the warning from the starship's defense system. He turned to look out the window and saw a ray of light hit the outer shell of the starship. Buzz, the interstellar spaceship trembled slightly. This time, Kale's attack did not penetrate the outer shell of the spaceship. Instead, it was blocked by a thick layer of energy shield. The fusion energy and the spaceship's energy were canceling each other out. I want to see how many times you can block. Kale clenched his fists and the fusion energy wrapped around his fists. He then punched out continuously, turning into beams of light that bombarded the energy shield. The interstellar spaceship that was 1,000,000 times bigger than him shook violently. The interstellar spaceship's energy shield was dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it looked like it was about to completely disintegrate. Commander, what should we do? On the starship, a group of Kree guards anxiously waited for the commander's reply. What else can we do? Run if you can. The commander smiled sadly. He stood alone in the command center. For the last time, he trembled as he contacted Luo Nan, the man he swore loyalty to. The call connected, and Luo Nan directly asked on the screen, "How is it? Have you obtained the Universal Spirit Orb?" "No, we failed." The commander shook his head and looked straight at Luo Nan. "Run quickly. It'll be too late if we wait any longer." Chapter 399. Bang. The dazzling punch that carried the fusion energy and the force of 10,000 kilograms caused the energy shield of the spaceship in front of Kyle to dim and disintegrate like fireworks. The 5-meter-thick interstellar steel plate below also rumbled and collapsed inch by inch, revealing only the hole that led to the command room inside the spaceship. Hula, all the oxygen in the command room was sucked away by outer space. Many of the alien guards were dragged out of the command room, screaming in pain. Exposed to the harsh environment of outer space, the alien guards' bodies immediately froze. Their outer appearance was frozen into white frost, becoming space garbage that floated forever. Kale slowed down his flying speed and flew in lightly. He stepped on the deck of the spaceship and waved his hand. The fusion energy beam melted the steel plate and sealed the hole that he created. Kale looked forward. There was only one person left in the command room. He was wearing the uniform of Carrie. His skin was dark blue, and his face was painted like an Indian. "You should be the commander, right?" Kale retracted his fusion energy and sized up the other party. The commander also stared at him closely. Commander Carey didn't expect that the one who forced hundreds of invincible spaceships to retreat was actually a human being. The commander changed his previous domineering attitude and asked humbly, "Your Excellency, how should I address you?" Kale said straightforwardly, "My name is Kale. I'm a human from Earth." "Human?" Commander Carey was stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. He laughed until tears were about to fall from his eyes. The Carey interstellar spaceship that shook the Milky Way Alliance actually lost to a barbaric human today. "You're surprised, aren't you? There are a few others like me." Kale smiled faintly. He walked forward slowly and took out a creature card. Commander Carey laughed and said, "Don't think that you've won just because you killed me. We, the Kree race, have survived dozens of interstellar battles in history. We're still the dominant force today. Your Earth, on the other hand, has only just risen. It's just a spark of civilization that can be extinguished at any time. So what? Kneel down." The corners of Kale's mouth curled up as he pressed down with his palm. The tenfold force field forced the other party to kneel on the ground. Commander Carey roared, "Just kill me. We the Kree people will never yield. There will come a day when the great and respected Luo Nan will avenge us. Luo Nan? Kale smiled. Just as he was about to make his move, Vice suddenly sent him a message. Boss, there's a voice transmission going on here. Someone might be eavesdropping on our conversation. The commander's expression changed slightly. At the same time, a hoarse and deep voice sounded from the communication station. Kale, right? I think we need to have a good talk. Luo Nan, don't worry. I'll go talk to you personally. Kale raised his hand and blasted out a dazzling beam of light, shattering the entire communication station into dust, leaving only a pitch-black hole where it once stood. Venom. Looking down at Commander Carey in front of him, Kale materialized the bio card in his hand. The moment Venom entered his body, a black tentacle immediately lashed out and pierced into the commander's temple. It went straight to the memory tissue of his brain. A few seconds later, the commander finished providing the last bit of useful information. His brain shut down and he fell straight to the ground. Venom finished organizing the information and spoke in Kale's mind. Boss, we've obtained the forces of the Nemesis Empire and the location of the target, Luo Nan. After Kale finished listening to the information, he turned Venom into a card and continued to circulate the fusion energy. Rings of dazzling light rose and lingered around his body. Kale's legs kicked off and he turned into a beam of light that pierced through the outer shell of the interstellar spaceship. He no longer paid attention to the fleeing interstellar spaceships and shot towards the Carey Empire's planet at the fastest speed possible. He turned into a faint star and disappeared in the blink of an eye. At this very moment, in the center of the Carey Empire, there was an enormous dark ancient palace. Blue flame torches were lit on the walls of the palace. The ruler of the empire, Luo Nan, sat on the throne wearing a hooded cloak and holding a starhammer scepter. They failed. How is this possible? Humans? It can't be related to that woman, right? Luo Nan's face was as heavy as water. Even though he heard the worst news, he was still calm and composed, worthy of the title of ruler. They've come to find me? Then come. I, Luo Nan, have never been afraid of anyone. Luo Nan seemed to know that even if he called for his subordinates, they wouldn't be of any use. So he didn't dispatch any troops to protect him. He also didn't have the slightest intention of escaping. He just sat on the throne like this, tightly gripping the starhammer scepter. He quietly waited for the minutes and seconds to pass. After an unknown amount of time, the 10-meter-tall palace doors suddenly opened from the outside. A whistling wind rushed in, causing the blue flames of the torches on the walls to violently flicker. Luo Nan raised his eyes to look. Following the sound of footsteps, there was a human figure constantly approaching. The blue flames only illuminated the intruder's face when the intruder approached the palace hall. Silver-haired, gold-shattering pupils. A robust human male. It was none other than Kale, who had arrived at the speed of light. Intruder, state your name. Luo Nan snorted coldly. The starhammer struck the floor, causing the entire palace hall to tremble. Kale smiled and said, "Don't you already know?" Luo Nan, due to certain reasons I can only eliminate you first. Is it because of the universal spirit orb? Luo Nan's eyes were cold and gloomy. He stared straight at Kale as he slowly rose from his seat. His body was considered tall among the Kree people, but he was already over 2 meters tall. His body carried the might of a primordial beast. There's a reason. The universal spirit orb is on my body. You want it? Beg me. Perhaps I'll consider letting you take a look. Kale taunted wildly. You've seen the king of the Kree Empire, and you've even barged into the Palace of Power. Why don't you hurry up and kneel and salute? Perhaps if you do, I'll consider leaving your corpse intact. Luo Nan sneered over and over. He grabbed the starhammer scepter with both hands and shouted, "As for the universal spirit orb, I'll go get it myself." Luo Nan leaped high into the air as soon as he finished speaking. He was in the air, and the stored starhammer was raised high above his head. When he reached the highest point, his body fell, and the starhammer rapidly smashed down at Kale's head. Clang. It was as if he had struck a star. Luo Nan's pupils contracted violently. He didn't see Kale make any movements, but the starhammer's head was firmly blocked by his opponent's left hand. A gale rushed outwards in the chaotic air, causing Luo Nan's silver hair to become somewhat disheveled. The king of the Kree Empire, a warrior race. Is this all you've got? Kale looked at Luo Nan with a smile that wasn't a smile. Luo Nan's gaze sharpened, and the temperature of the air in the palace hall suddenly dropped. The starhammer scepter emitted an extremely cold air, freezing Kyle's left hand and even his body into a block of ice in an instant. The frost spread down to the floor of the hall, spreading outwards. The blue flames of the torches were extinguished and dimmed. Chapter 400. Wind and frost whistled, and an extremely cold white air pervaded every corner of the sealed palace hall. Even the surrounding walls were frozen into ice. Kale, who was in the center of the hall, had completely transformed into a human ice sculpture. He was frozen within the light blue solid ice, not moving at all. It was as if his life force had been severed, and he was in a state of suspended animation. I want to use your head and blood as a sacrifice to the dead Kree. I want to appease their souls. Luo Nan's dark blue face revealed a murderous and tyrannical expression. He raised the star hammer, which emitted cold air, high up into the air and aimed it at the head of Kale's ice sculpture. But before he could swing the hammer, the ice sculpture suddenly trembled slightly. You haven't entered suspended animation yet? Luo Nan's eyes widened in shock. Kale, who was frozen within the solid ice, suddenly turned his pair of gold-shattering pupils. He stared straight at Luo Nan, and the corner of his mouth curled up in a strange arc. Not good. Luo Nan's heart grew anxious. He couldn't care about anything else. He swung the star hammer down with both hands, and the high-tech warhammer hummed at the same time. It emitted rings of vibrational waves, amplifying the surface of the hammer. Even a steel building would collapse on the spot from this hammer strike. Just as the star hammer was about to smash into Kale's head, the solid ice suddenly cracked from the inside out. Shockingly, a scorching golden tide of flames gushed out from the countless cracks in the solid ice. Bang! The palace hall was completely filled with steam. A moment ago, it was a frozen domain that was below 100 degrees Celsius. In the next instant, it had turned into a melting zone that was over 1,000 degrees Celsius. A dual heaven of ice and fire. The ice and frost melted into water at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then the steam turned into nothingness, and the figures of two people gradually appeared within the dissipating steam. The star hammer was blocked by Kale, who was wrapped in flames. The vibrational waves passed through his body and smashed into the palace door 20 meters away. The door trembled and several enormous cracks bloomed on it. Not a bad weapon. Kale felt his blood and energy churn as he withstood the vibrational waves head-on. He calmly looked at Luo Nan. Rings of golden flames rose from his small feet and wrapped around his entire body. Even his silver hair spontaneously combusted and burned fiercely. Kale had completely transformed into a man of fire. This power belongs to the Asgardian race. You are not an ordinary human from Earth. Luo Nan exploded with a furious roar. He held onto the authority in a death grip and used all his strength to press the star hammer down. However, he was pushed back by Kale, who took a step forward. He plowed 2 deep marks in the ground. The flame of several thousand degrees Celsius tempered the star hammer. Naturally, the star hammer made of special materials would not fuse, but the heat wave crushed the previous cold air. The high temperature was transmitted all the way to the handle of the scepter. Sizzle! Black smoke emitted from Luo Nan's hand as he gripped the star hammer scepter. He resisted the high temperature with great difficulty, unwilling to let go of his weapon. Kyle held the star hammer and pushed Luo Nan a few meters away just like this. I really am a human. However, I am a human who has transcended the god race. Kale chuckled. He twisted his wrist, and a pillar of flames suddenly erupted from his left hand that was holding the star hammer, sending Luo Nan and his hammer flying. Pah! Luo Nan's body smashed fiercely onto Carrie's throne. The supreme stone chair, which had a certain sense of age, shattered into pieces. Luo Nan's burned hand was still holding onto the star hammer scepter. He struggled to prop up his body from a pile of rubble. He spat out a large mouthful of blood with a wah sound. Is this the end? Kale's body was burning with golden divine flames. He calmly looked at the extraterrestrial emperor, who was vomiting blood on the ground in an extremely sorry state. Luo Nan might seem weak, but in reality his body's strength and strength were second only to the Asgardian god race. The cold air had faintly reached the level of the ice giant divine equipment. The shock wave from the star hammer in his hand could shatter a space warship. It was a pity that he met Kale, who possessed the power of the god race and had completely awakened his fire-type godly power. Luo Nan was used to killing the weak, but he suddenly suffered a heavy blow from a true powerhouse. Congratulations. You forced me to this point. Luo Nan climbed up from the ground. There were still traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. He grinned coldly. Do you know where this place is? Isn't it your palace, the meeting hall, the place where you sacrificed the enemy's head? Kale shrugged indifferently. Oh. Right, starting tomorrow this place will become your exclusive grave. Luo Nan straightened his body and slammed the star hammer scepter heavily against the floor. He spoke in a cold voice. This place used to be the Carey Empire, the place where the Supreme Intelligence existed. However, I killed her with my own hands over a dozen years ago, completely grasping the Carey Empire in my hands. Supreme Intelligence? Kale's heart skipped a beat. A controller like Luo Nan could not be considered a high-dimensional life form at the top of the universe. In the Marvel dimension, there were some high-dimensional life forms who had reached the peak of evolution. They were powerful and difficult to deal with. From what he knew, Grandmaster was one, Domum was another, God King Odin was another, Star-Lord's father was another, Thanos was another, and there were also consciousness life forms like the Supreme Intelligence. There was also the Observer, these life forms who did not participate in the world. Although Kale grasped extraordinary powers, he was not confident that he could deal with or even kill a high-dimensional life form. Now that he heard Luo Nan say that he had killed the Supreme Intelligence, he could not help but feel a bit incredulous. You must really want to know the method I used to kill the Supreme Intelligence. Luo Nan seemed to have seen through Kale's intentions. He smiled coldly. Then he held the star hammer with both hands and placed it horizontally in front of his chest. He said with inexplicable confidence, "This Carey Warhammer in my hand is the Carey Empire's single weapon artifact. It is called the Universal Weapon. It was created by the Carey Empire's highest technology. It can manipulate the energy of the universe. According to my wishes, it can decompose, recombine, and transform matter. It can also emit shock waves, absorb energy, create force fields, and so on." So, you used this Warhammer to kill the Supreme Intelligence? Kale suddenly became interested. He stared at the hammer in Luo Nan's hand. Every civilization had one or two single weapon artifacts that could destroy the world. For example, Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet, Thor's Tempest Warhammer, the Flame Giant's Eternal Flame. I didn't kill her. Instead, I exiled her. Luo Nan had just finished speaking when he suddenly pushed the Carey Warhammer forward. He said in a cold voice, "Human Kale, you have committed a serious crime. In the name of the leader of the Carey Empire, I sentence you to eternal exile." The Carey Warhammer flickered with a white halo. A mysterious and powerful force descended. Its target was Kale, who was on the battlefield. Kale's heart jumped fiercely. All the hairs on his body stood on end. He had an intense sense of danger. He instinctively wanted to circulate his merged energy and escape from the hall. But he was still a beat too late. The moment the mysterious force enveloped Kale, he was pulled into the spatial rift. His entire person disappeared from the hall. Only a circle of imprints was left behind. Hyperspace, teleportation. Luo Nan looked at the circle of imprints and muttered to himself, "Kale, you can stay in the space crack, forever alone and descend into oblivion." Chapter 401. Boom. The surrounding space and time shattered and rotated. Colorful lights flashed chaotically. Kale was wrapped in a strange mysterious power. It didn't cause any substantial damage to him. It was just like the Bifrost, a one-sided force teleportation. He was teleported from the Supreme Palace of Planet Kree to an unknown space. Every second was incomparably long. It was like traveling through hundreds of millions of light years. After half a minute, the speed of the teleportation gradually slowed down. It didn't stop until he reached the other side of the universe. After Kale ended the long teleportation, he shook his head. His chaotic consciousness instantly returned to clarity. Kale looked around and found that he was no longer in a place he knew. He was standing on a small planet with a bumpy surface. Although it was a small planet, its overall radius was only about 100 meters. However, its gravity was shockingly strong. It was close to 20 times that of Earth. The temperature was also surprisingly low. It was already below 0 degrees Celsius, where ordinary life forms couldn't survive. Kale looked up. Above him was a dark and dead starry sky of the universe. The bright twinkling stars seemed very far away, but it gave people the illusion that it was very close. "Vice, where is this?" Kale asked. Then his voice echoed in this vast space. The smartwatch beeped. Vice, who had been online all this time, quickly said, "Master, I'm not sure. There aren't any communication signals in the nearby light years. I updated the map of the Milky Way Alliance, but there aren't any galactic coordinates of this place." I still underestimated Luo Nan. His Kree artifact actually has a teleportation ability similar to the Bifrost. Maybe we've been teleported to a remote galactic system outside the Milky Way Alliance. Kale frowned slightly. For others, this was undoubtedly a death sentence. But Kale was different. He had the card space that stored a large amount of resources. Plus, he could fly through the universe with diffused energy. Even if he was teleported to the 9 realms, he would at most spend some extra time flying back. Thinking of this, Kale operated the fused energy. Dazzling lights flowed and rose on the surface of his body. He stomped on the ground, and like a humanoid fighter jet, he ignited the asteroid where he was and flew towards a random direction at the speed of light. Kale was flying at the fastest speed in the starry sky. Light speed was the standard, and when it reached its maximum speed, it faintly showed signs of surpassing light speed. Kale asked the Vice to pay attention to the signs and signals of civilization. They flew in an exploratory manner and it took them about half an hour. However, the longer they flew, the more Kale felt that something was wrong. Originally, he had set his sights on a spot of starlight as his target. However, even though they had flown far enough to cross the central region of the Milky Way Alliance, the distance between them and that spot of starlight was still the same as before they set off. No matter how hard they flew, they couldn't seem to reach that area in the distance. Kale was sweating profusely due to the intense consumption of the fused energy in his body. He wanted to take a break first, so he landed on an asteroid in front of him. After scanning the environment of the planet, Kale was suddenly stunned. He said, "Vice, did you notice that the asteroid we're standing on is very similar to the place where we first set off?" "It's not very similar, Master. The planet we're on now is the planet we teleported to before. The gravitational and magnetic fields are exactly the same." Vice also couldn't understand the situation at hand. After flying at the speed of light for half an hour, they ended up back at the same place? Kale touched his chin and thought of something important. He asked, "Vice, how long did I fly just now?" According to the system's calculation, it was 3 minutes. No, it should be 30 minutes, or 3 days. 3 years? Vice's system seemed to have broken down as it answered hesitantly. "I see." Kale took a deep breath as if he had understood something. His face was unprecedentedly serious. Vice said in disbelief, "Master, what did you think of?" "I realized that my system is unable to accurately calculate the time that has passed here." "Of course it's unable to calculate because this isn't our original universe. It's a dimensional dimension that doesn't have the concept of time and space." Kale sighed and casually picked up a small stone from the ground. He threw it out of the asteroid and the stone instantly disappeared without a trace. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he felt that after a while. With a whoosh, Kale grabbed the small stone that he had thrown behind him. This made his face even colder as he tried to verify his guess. There was no concept of time in this dimensional world, so even Vice couldn't calculate how much time had passed. It could be an instant or it could be decades. There was no concept of space, so no matter where they flew or how far they flew, they would eventually return to their original place. The small stone that was thrown out would also return to its starting point. "I never thought that other than Damuma's dark dimension, there's also the mirror dimension that is exclusive to mages. There are also many unknown third dimension dimensions." Kale narrowed his eyes. If he had the ring, he might be able to use the mirror dimension as a springboard to return to his original world. But now, even he couldn't find a way to escape in such a short time. "Master, there's something approaching us." Suddenly, Vice alerted him. "Yes, I can feel it too." Kale looked sideways and saw a mercury-like liquid floating in outer space. It landed on the asteroid and flowed towards him. When it was about 5 meters away, the mercury-like liquid suddenly surged and formed a female human body. The details of the human body were gradually revealed, and it quickly transformed into a beautiful blonde girl. The girl was wearing an old white nurse uniform. Her sapphire-like eyes were very big, and her long eyelashes were slightly trembling. Her pure and flawless smile was even more beautiful than an angel's. Kale looked at the person in front of him and his body trembled. He blurted out, "Lucy? Why are you here?" The blonde girl maintained her sweet smile and gently said to Kale, "I didn't think that there would be other creatures that would enter here." "You're not Lucy. Who are you? Why did you transform into Lucy?" Kale's joy dissipated. He coldly stared at the other party. The dazzling light on his body was crazily flowing along with his killing intent. "Me? You can call me Supreme Wisdom." The blonde girl smiled and looked down at her appearance. She slowly said to Kale, "Listen, I don't have any hostility. I'm just a body of consciousness. I don't have an external appearance. My incarnation is only created based on the person that others miss. This kind of conversation should be pleasing to your eyes. No, I don't want you to become like her." Kale flipped his hand and a dazzling light shattered the blonde girl on the spot. The Supreme Wisdom's body of consciousness was shattered, but it quickly reformed. This time, it transformed into the appearance of the new beauty. She helplessly spread her hands and said, "This should be fine, right?" Chapter 402. That's more like it. Kale looked at the supreme intellect in front of him, who had transformed into a new beauty. He did not choose to attack again. His eyebrows twitched as he stared at the supreme intellect and said in surprise, "Wait, I seem to have seen her before. You should be talking about the new leader of the new civilization, right?" The supreme intellect was not surprised at all. She touched the white skin on her face and twirled the silver bangs on her earlobe. She smiled and said, "She is a very bold and courageous woman. She is an enemy worthy of respect. In the past, I often used her appearance to show off to others." "Is that so? The new leader I have seen was more than a dozen years older than your current appearance." Kale was expressionless as he mocked coldly. The supreme intellect's face stiffened slightly. She was silent for a moment before she said bitterly, "So that's how it is. More than a dozen years have passed in the outside world?" "I understand now." Kale understood and said, "You are the former leader of the Kree civilization, the supreme intellect who was rumored to have been killed by Luonan." Luonan. The supreme intellect heard this name as if she had been provoked. Her face instantly became extremely ugly. She clenched her soft fists and gritted her teeth without caring about her appearance. That bastard. As a criminal of the Kree Empire, he actually dared to form a faction to rebel against the official. He even used the Kree artifact to teleport me to this damned place. Kyle shrugged and added, "Obviously he succeeded after he claimed to have killed you. After claiming that he had killed you, Luonan became the one and only ruler of the Kree Empire. I was too careless back then. I did not notice the internal conflict of the Kree Empire in time." The supreme intellect sighed helplessly. She looked up at Kale and said with a strange expression, "Then who are you? I noticed just now that your body has a strange and powerful energy. It is very similar to a human woman I met when I was the ruler of the Kree Empire 20 years ago." "A human woman? Similar fusion energy?" Kale was interested and asked, "Just call me Kale. Can you tell me more about that woman?" "Kale, it doesn't matter if I tell you. Her name is Carol Danvers, an Air Force pilot on Earth," the Supreme Intelligence said slowly. "After being struck by the energy tide of the shattered Lightspeed engine, her body gained a mysterious energy that is 90% similar to the one you use. We, the Kree, had wanted to control her and use that energy for our own use, but we failed in the end." "Hold on, you can't be a human from Earth as well, right?" At this point, the Supreme Wisdom stared blankly at Kale and asked curiously, "Congratulations, you got it right." Kale narrowed his eyes. There were actually other humans who had mastered the fusion energy earlier than him. This was something he had not expected. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Kale thought to himself, trying to think of the connection points. Fusion energy could not be born out of thin air. If there was a woman in the past who had obtained a power similar to his on Earth, it meant that there was a unique primer on Earth. The Supreme Wisdom lamented softly, "Earth is truly a place filled with mysteries and miracles. Humans are also a race that constantly brings surprises." "It's just us also." Kale showed a rare moment of modesty. He raised his chin and suggested, "Since we have a common enemy, Luonan, you and I can work together to find a way to leave this place." The Supreme Wisdom was stunned. She then shook her head and said, "Since you've entered this place, don't even think about leaving. Otherwise, I would have returned to the original universe dimension long ago." Kale was not discouraged. He continued, "What is this place exactly?" The Supreme Wisdom answered seriously, "As you can see, there is no time, space, or even superfluous matter. It is just a region of pure energy. It has not formed a complete dimensional dimension that can give birth to life. This dimensional dimension is sandwiched between countless space-time gaps. It is a place that does not exist. I don't know how Luonan found it." Kale looked at her with deep surprise and asked doubtfully, "You are the Supreme Wisdom, the apex of consciousness life forms. Even you can't leave this dimensional region?" "I've just lived for a long time. My will is so strong that I can control the minds of any creature. My psychic power is enough to cross the universe. Other than that, I'm not much stronger than you who has an extraordinary body." The Supreme Wisdom's tone was filled with helplessness. She then said straightforwardly, "I'll tell you the truth. If you want to leave this unknown dimension, there are only two ways." "Tell me." Kale nodded. The Supreme Wisdom extended a finger and smiled seductively. "The first method is to abandon your original body and fuse your soul's consciousness with the pure energy here. Over time you will become the ruler of this place. You will have the power to transcend the boundaries of dimensions and permeate into other dimensions. Don't mess with me. If there were no drawbacks you would have done it long ago. Kale scoffed. When the Supreme Wisdom mentioned the first way, Domum's name instantly appeared in his mind. There are gains and losses, the Supreme Wisdom continued. The Supreme Wisdom continued, after obtaining the power of this dimension, your soul consciousness will be assimilated with this dimension. Although you can infiltrate other dimensions, you will never be able to completely leave this dimension for the rest of your life. This is because this dimension is your main body. I knew it. Kale sneered. He knew about Domum. When it assimilated with the dark dimension and became an invincible master, it was accompanied by endless loneliness and wildness. This was equivalent to giving you a cage the size of a world and letting you live in it alone for eternity. The second way is both simple and difficult, the Supreme Wisdom said softly. Using the interstellar teleportation ability, the dimension's boundary will not be broken, but it can be used as a springboard to jump back to the original universe. If it was me in the past, I could do this easily with the help of Carrie. But now I don't have any tools. Even with my powerful psychic power, I can't do anything. After hearing this, Kale felt helpless. The teleportation ability took a big detour and came back here? The Supreme Wisdom was lacking a divine artifact, while Kyle was only lacking a mage's ring. Without the ring to open the mirror dimension space and without the rainbow bridge, he couldn't use the teleportation ability. Only you and I live in this dimension. In the future you will be my neighbor. This planet formed from pure energy is yours. I will live on the planet next to it. After the Supreme Wisdom finished speaking, it waved goodbye and flew toward a slightly bigger planet. Master, what should we do now? Vice, who had transformed into a watch, asked. What else can we do? Let's stay here first. Let me think of something. Kale looked at the barren energy planet and then at the small planet not far away. He felt a little incredulous. 1 or 2 hours ago he was still fighting the villain Ronan in the Milky Way Alliance. But now, he had to consider spending the rest of his life with a consciousness in an unknown dimension. Chapter 403. In an unknown dimension. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The ear-piercing sonic booms did not stop, causing violent winds to howl and wreak havoc. The consciousness of the Supreme Intelligence, which had changed back to its Mercury form, was lazily lying down in a hole in a small planet. Looking up, one could see a human-shaped dazzling streak of light speeding up in space, moving back and forth in this vast and boundless region, like a headless fly trying to find a breakthrough point. The traces of light even intertwined into a net in the region of space. After an unknown period of time, that streak of light reached beyond the speed of light and disappeared into the other side of the world, not leaving any traces behind. The Supreme Intelligence was stunned. Looking around at the silent starry sky, it was secretly surprised. Could it be that fellow succeeded? Before it could finish speaking, light and sonic booms appeared from the other side of space. The Supreme Intelligence looked up at the human-shaped streak of light that was rushing towards it. It could not help but let out a sorrowful cry. Damn it! Kale, stop right now. The streak of light was like a comet, dragging a long tail of light as it landed on the planet where the Supreme Intelligence was. The small planet instantly shattered into pieces, turning into pure energy that spread out in all directions. My fifth favorite place is gone, all gone. The Supreme Intelligence floated in mid-air, its consciousness wriggling intensely, filled with anger as it gritted its teeth. After smashing the planet, that streak of dazzling light finally stopped, slowly coming to a stop in mid-air. After the dazzling light dissipated a little, the body of a human youth was finally revealed. Kale waved his hand at the consciousness and said, Sorry little Hui. I already said, without teleportation, don't think of using extreme speed to break through this region. Also, I am the Supreme Intelligence, don't call me little Hui. The Supreme Intelligence said righteously. Kale shrugged and said uninterestedly, Aren't I just trying? Who knows, maybe there is a place here that is unstable and can accidentally break through the dimensional wall. It's useless. I already said that there is no space here, which is the concept of distance. Even if you search through the entire place, you won't be able to find the end of the dimensional wall. The Supreme Wisdom sighed and gave up on persuading him. Forget it, forget it. Even if I tell you 100 times, you still won't give up. Just keep trying. One day you will give up. After all, the life and time here is endless. Having said that, the Supreme Wisdom simply ignored Kale and slowly flew towards another planet. Having met such a tormenting human, it could finally experience the true signs of the passing of time. This feeling wasn't bad. After the Supreme Intelligence had left, Kale did not attempt flight again. Instead, he returned to the planet he had first descended upon and sat cross-legged on the surface, holding his chin as he fell into deep thought. After coming to this dimension, he didn't know how much time had passed in his original world. It might have only been half a minute, half a year, or half a century. Without the concept of time, it was impossible to calculate and sense the time spent in this dimension. Even if he could calculate it, the time would be inaccurate. It didn't match the time of the original universe. Kale's flight escape plan had been attempted thousands of times, if not tens of thousands, but there was still no progress. On the contrary, his control and utilization of the fused energy had become more proficient. He had also become more familiar with flying at the speed of light in outer space. He wouldn't accidentally fly a few light years away. Vice, is there any progress on your side? Kale looked at the planet's surface not far away. There was a new signal tower that was 10 meters tall. Many technological products and krypton energy stored in the card space had been used to construct it. It was constructed with the Vice as the internal main system. According to the Vice calculation theory, the signal could reach Earth directly from the new star of the Milky Way Alliance. He might be able to use it to send a distress signal to the original dimension. The Vice replied, "There is no breakthrough for now. Any signal of any frequency can only reverberate in this sealed dimension. Not even a single letter can be transmitted out." Is that so? This is really troublesome. Kale didn't expect that it would be so difficult to return to the original dimension after being trapped in this dimension. Even he, who had mastered the fused energy, the Vice, who was a top-notch product of technology, and the supreme intelligence of a biological consciousness entity, were powerless against this. This also gave Kale a new understanding of dimensions. The reason why other creatures from higher dimensions couldn't invade lower dimensions was because the dimensional walls were difficult to break or even search for. Do I really have to walk the path of Damumo, abandon my body, and use my soul consciousness to assimilate with the energy of this dimension? Kale muttered to himself. Suddenly he placed his left hand on the planet's surface and gently closed his eyes, expelling all distracting thoughts from his mind. The divine power of fire and the mysterious light energy in his body instinctively combined into a fused energy. It attached itself to the surface of his body and circulated back and forth. Finally, it flowed down his arm and spread circles of dazzling ripples on the surface of the planet. The ripples of light covered the planet that was crystallized by pure energy. Kale seemed to be initiating the initial assimilation with the planet. "Master, what are you doing?" Vice's voice sounded bewildered. The signal tower quickly transformed into a car and ignited its engine. It left the planet that Kale was on and observed from a safe distance in space. The Mercury-like consciousness floated over from afar and stopped beside the car. The Supreme Intelligence said, "It seems that your master has already chosen that path. He has given up his original body and become an invincible ruler bound here for eternity." How can this be? Vice clenched its metal fists and stared at Kale, who had become one with the energy planet. It still couldn't believe that the man in front of it would walk that path at the end of his rope. There's nothing bad about this. To many creatures, this is also an opportunity in the universe. The Supreme Intelligence had lived for thousands of eras and had long seen through people's hearts. It said coldly, "Although he has given up everything he had before, he has obtained the power, lifespan, and absolute control that others yearn for." Vice shook its head and refuted firmly, "What do you know? To the current master, things like power and lifespan are no longer dreams. They are goals that can be easily obtained. He who pursues perfection will definitely not choose to give up everything in the original dimension." "Then let's wait and see." The Supreme Intelligence wasn't angry and said indifferently. As time passed, Kale almost turned into a small figure of light and emitted an extremely dazzling light in this dimensional region. The energy planet below also turned into a ball of light. The energy aura of the two completely merged into one. Everything seemed to be developing rapidly in the direction of assimilation. With a boom, the entire energy planet suddenly disappeared as if it had been absorbed and evaporated into nothingness. Chapter 404. Master. Vice rushed towards Kale in surprise. Seeing that his original body was still there, he grinned, revealing a row of metal gears. "I knew that you wouldn't choose to give up your body. Of course, I won't be the second Domum." Kale smiled. If he were to give up everything he once had and evolve to his current superhuman body, he would really be taking things too hard. "What's going on?" You clearly used the energy in your body to assimilate with the planet, and the entire energy planet was absorbed by you. Why do you still have a human body and there aren't any signs of assimilation? The utmost wisdom stared fixedly at Kyle. Even his transcendent consciousness was stuck, unable to comprehend everything that had happened earlier on with his own knowledge. Kale calmed himself down and asked, "Who said that the energy planet was absorbed by me? If you didn't absorb it, then where did the energy planet go?" The Supreme Wisdom didn't know what was going on, but it could sense that the pure energy crystal had indeed completely disappeared from this dimension. It was taken away by me. Kale smiled faintly. Looking at the Supreme Wisdom who wanted to continue asking, he shrugged and said, "The specific details are business secrets, so I can't tell you. I can only tell you that I might have found a way to leave this place." After Kale finished speaking, he took a deep breath and sank his consciousness into the card space. There was a brand new purple card quietly hanging in the air. Pure Energy Crystal. A pure energy crystal the size of a small planet. Purple item card. A crystal formed by the combination of pure energy, the size of a small planet. It can be exploited to produce electricity, light energy, heat energy, and so on. Powerful creatures can absorb this pure energy to strengthen their body and consciousness. At the same time, their body and soul will assimilate with the dimension that produces this energy. They can't stay in other dimensions for long. After absorbing a certain amount, they will be forced to become the master of that dimension. Current status can be summoned as a physical body. It can actually be done like this. Kale was speechless. It was as if he had accidentally opened the door to a new world. He didn't expect that after adjusting the energy in his body to assimilate with the planet, he could directly read the card and extract the energy from the planet. Furthermore, the level of this pure energy ball card was actually ridiculously high. As for the positional dimensional region, there was nothing there. However, what it lacked the least was pure energy. Coming out of the card space, Kale quickly looked around. Looking at the thousands of large and small energy clusters floating in the dimension, his golden eyes suddenly flashed with a green glow of excitement. This was a wealth of resources that no one had ever excavated since ancient times. "Kale, you said that you have a way to leave this place?" The Supreme Wisdom could not contain his excitement as he asked Kale. Kale nodded and said confidently, "I can't guarantee it." However, he finally saw a glimmer of hope. "Next, I need to make use of the energy planets in this dimension." The Supreme Wisdom pondered for a moment and finally chose to believe in the human youth. It replied, "No problem. Just leave me a place to settle down. When you find a way to leave this place, I hope you can take me with you. You can put forward any conditions for the deal." "Sure." Kale agreed. Looking at the surrounding energy planets, he picked the next target and flew over quickly. He started the prelude of assimilation by marking his aura and imprint on the energy star cluster. Then, he did not absorb it into his body but just directly extracted it into cards. Kale repeated this step and transformed into a planet plunderer, turning the energy clusters of the unknown dimension into high-level cards one by one. There was plenty of time here. Kale was not in a hurry at all. Under the process of card extraction, the number of energy planets in the vast positional dimensional region continued to decrease. Not long after, the vast space became dark. On the other hand, in the material area of the card space, the number of purple item cards continued to increase. 10 cards, 100 cards, 500 cards. Only when he drew 607 cards did Kale stop his frenzied plundering. It was not that the energy clusters in the positional dimensional region had been depleted, but that the positional dimensional region had lost a large amount of pure energy and was showing signs of collapse and self-destruction. However, this was already an unprecedented huge gain. Inside the card space, Kale's thought incarnation looked at the neatly arranged purple cards in front of him. There were more than 1,000 of them, densely packed and suspended in the air, emitting a bright and alluring purple luster. Family Cal's half a century of accumulation on Earth, which was 10,000 blue item cards, Krypton, was already a wealth that could rival a country's resources. Now there were more than 600 purple item cards. This amount of resources could easily buy a civilized planet. Sacrificing 10 purple grade cards can directly draw 3 types of cards that start from purple grade. In other words, I can draw 60 purple grade cards and even have a high probability of producing a gold grade card. Even Kale found it hard to calm down when he thought of this. One had to know that he only had a few purple grade cards on him. Items, abilities, and creatures that reached this grade, no matter which one it was, had extraordinary value. Purple grade cards were definitely of high quality. No, what am I thinking? The most important thing now is to pray that I can find a way to leave this dimension. It would be great if I can get a hanging ring. Although Kale had such thoughts, it was not realistic because the hanging ring had not reached the purple grade yet. It was not within the scope of this card draw. No matter what he drew, it would not be of much help to him now. As long as he could draw an item related to interstellar teleportation, it would be fine. Kale prayed in his heart, rubbed his palms together, took a deep breath, and chose 100 purple item cards to sacrifice. Purple grade 10 consecutive draws. You have sacrificed Pure Energy Crystal, X 100. Draw successful. Congratulations, you have received Life Enhancement, X 2, Pride Beast Infant, Lust Beast Infant, Gluttony Beast Infant, Greed Beast Infant, Sloth Beast Infant, Rage Beast Infant, Envy Beast Infant, Devouring Beast Infant. Kale, there were too many things to complain about, he did not know where to start. First of all, the common life enhancement card appeared again and there were 2 of them. Secondly, why were the remaining 8 life enhancement cards all life enhancement cards? Was this a sudden burst of good luck, or was it bad luck? It was not like he was going to stay here, but to draw a teleportation item or ability card that could allow him to leave this dimension. Forget it, let's just take a look. Maybe the baby creature that I draw has the ability to teleport. Kale could only comfort himself like this. He took the 8 strange life enhancement cards in his hands and read them carefully one by one. Pride Beast, Lust Beast. This is enough for the 7 sins. Is this the so-called card series? Chapter 405. Young Beast of Pride. A young evil beast spirit that has mastered the power of pride. Purple creature card. Spirit beasts usually existed in the form of consciousness, like a mass of black fog. When they matured, they could transform into a monster-like physical body, with sharp claws and fangs, powerful strength and physique. They were war creatures that were born purely for killing. The beast spirit of pride was arrogant and conceited. It could not move freely when it was young and could only merge with human-like creatures with similar personalities. After merging, the creature would be randomly given a natural ability such as body strengthening, high-speed flight, lightning control, and so on. Current status: physical summon available. The second card was the same. Young Beast of Lust. A young evil beast spirit that has mastered the power of lust. Purple creature card. Beast spirits usually existed in the form of consciousness. The beast spirit of lust was lustful and lustful. It could not move freely when it was young and could only merge with human-like creatures with similar personalities. After merging, the creature would be randomly given a natural ability such as negative emotions absorption, mind control, mind reading, and so on. Current status: physical summon available. The third card. Young Beast of Gluttony. A young evil beast spirit that has mastered the power of gluttony. Purple creature card. Beast spirits usually existed in the form of consciousness. The beast spirit of gluttony was lustful and lustful. It could not move freely when it was young and could only merge with human-like creatures with similar personalities. After merging, the creature would be randomly given a natural ability such as evil magic, nibbling absorption, black hole mouth, and so on. Current status: physical summon available. There were also similar cards like the 4th, 5th, 6th, and up to the 7th, which made up the 7 sins beast spirits. Kyle was so surprised that he clicked his tongue in wonder. The 7 cards in his hand were really the same type of creature cards, with the prefix from pride to jealousy. They corresponded to the evil beast spirit creatures of the 7 sins, and even the attributes of the cards were similar. These evil beast spirits were similar to the symbiotic body venom that he had just extracted. They were all in the infant state and could only survive by attaching themselves to other creatures. They could strengthen the host's body and give them powerful superpowers. After Kale finished looking through them, his gaze fell on one of the creature cards. Young Beast of Sloth. A young evil beast spirit that has mastered the power of sloth. Purple creature card. Beast spirits usually existed in the form of consciousness. The sloth beast spirit was lazy, unable to move freely when it was young. It could only fuse with a humanoid creature with the same personality. After fusing, it would give the creature a random innate ability such as teleportation, space gate, slow halo, etc. Current status: physical summon is available. The sin of sloth grants the host the superpower of teleportation and space manipulation. Withdrawing from the card space, Kale's eyes flickered. He stood up from a planet, flipped his left hand, and immediately pulled out a purple creature card. After the physical summon, the card disappeared from his hand, and a cloud of black mist suddenly surged out. The tiny black mist-like creature with its incorporeal body curled up lazily after seeing Kale beside him. It then lowered its posture and said respectfully, "Obeying your call, Sloth is at your service, my lord." "Are you lazy?" Kale looked at the fog-like creature from head to toe, looked down at it and said straightforwardly, "Can you attach yourself to my body and use your teleportation ability?" "Let me try." The sloth beast spirit tried to fly forward, circled around Kale a few times, and then retreated with fear and regret. "My lord, forgive me for not being able to do that. You don't have any lazy habits and your body has power that far exceeds mine. The double rejection makes me unable to enter your body. I understand, you can go back." Kale sighed, waved his hand forward, and the sloth beast spirit was instantly converted back into a card and thrown back into the card space. The sloth beast spirit needed to be a parasite on its host to barely use its teleportation ability. Where was he going to find a creature with Sloth's personality now? I can only continue drawing? Wait a minute. Kale suddenly remembered that there was still a creature card that he had not checked, so he directly pulled it out and held the card between his two fingers. Dimensional Devouring Beast Youth. Can devour the youth of a monster from another dimension. Rare purple ability card. I didn't notice it just now, but this is actually a rare purple creature card. Kale opened his eyes wide, held the card, and continued to check the description in detail. The Dimensional Devouring Beast has a cute and harmless appearance, and a super strong devouring ability. It is an extremely dangerous dimensional creature. It is an oviparous creature with tentacles and sharp teeth in its mouth, and can devour almost everything. Its stomach is connected to another dimension, so it will not get fat no matter how many things it devours. The Dimensional Devouring Beast's intelligence is low, it can only understand simple instructions, and cannot speak human language or distinguish between right and wrong. Current status: can summon a physical body. A creature that can devour everything? Cute appearance? What does it look like? Kale's curiosity grew stronger, he pondered for a moment, and summoned the creature card in his hand. He could just take a look at it directly. With a flash of light, a palm-sized orange creature suddenly appeared, jumped onto Kale's left shoulder, and licked his face affectionately with its tongue. Kale looked like he had suffered a blow, looking at the little creature on his shoulder, his mouth twitching slightly. This is the extremely dangerous Dimensional Devouring Beast? That was clearly a cat. To be more precise, it was an orange cat cub, less than 3 months old. When Kale looked at it, the orange cat cub even shouted, "Meow. Let me take a look at your mouth." Kale pondered, grabbed the orange cat's neck, lifted it in front of him, and used his pinky fingers to pry open the cat's mouth. It is indeed not an ordinary species from Earth. Kale's eyes lit up, there was surprisingly no fishy smell in the cat's mouth, there were new sharp teeth and small tentacles in the inner wall of its mouth, and there was a hole in its throat that had a mysterious suction force, like a miniature version of a black hole. After being played with by Kale, the orange cat cub suddenly sneezed, and fell from his hand into his arms. The orange cat cub sniffed as if it had smelled something, and pounced on Kale's lower abdomen excitedly. Several tentacles opened its mouth, and it did not hesitate to bite Kale's lower body. *CK. Kale felt a chill in his lower body as if something in his body had been bitten. He hurriedly grabbed the orange cat cub's body and pulled it away from his body. Meow. The moment the orange cat cub left Kale's body, one of the tentacles wrapped around a dazzling blue gem, and it was pulled out from his lower abdomen bit by bit. That is, no way. The moment the blue gem appeared, Kale held his breath, his eyes and mind seemed to be attracted, and his body was frozen in place like a statue. It was the space gem that had not been seen for many years. At the end of World War II, Kale used the space gem to open the transmission light beam to leave Earth, and it mysteriously disappeared. Kale originally thought that it had been left behind on planet Sokka, but he did not expect that it had been hidden in his body all this time, and had not left his body for more than half a century. He suddenly realized where the mysterious light energy that formed the fusion energy, other than the divine power of fire, came from. At the same time, Kale was very sure that they would be able to leave this dimensional area very soon. Chapter 406. The capital of the Keri Empire, within the Supreme Palace. Luo Nan sat paralyzed on the throne with a pale face. He held the Keri warhammer in one hand and the armrest in the other. He gasped for breath in large mouthfuls, and sweat dripped endlessly from his deep blue forehead. Clearly, Luo Nan's powerful body was unable to endure the absolute disadvantage of a fierce battle and the forced interstellar teleportation. That human male called Kyle. Luo Nan still had lingering fears. The opponent was really too strong. The oppressive feeling she gave him was in no way inferior to the one he had encountered on Earth, the one called Captain Marvel. In fact, Kale was faintly stronger than Captain Marvel. Tap tap tap. The elite guards of the Carey Empire heard the sounds of fighting and arrived late. They entered through the heavily damaged enormous door in a single file. The captain of the guards of the Carey Empire held a spear in his hand. He looked around at the frozen, scorched and baptized palace hall. He couldn't help but look impatiently at Luo Nan in his seat. He lowered his head and asked, "Lord Luo Nan, what happened? Are you all right?" "Of course I'm fine. What can mere intruders do to me?" Luo Nan restrained his emotions and snorted coldly. His face was taut with dignity. "Of course you are. There is no one in the entire Milky Way alliance that is stronger than you, Lord Luo Nan." The captain of the guards quickly nodded in agreement. Then he spoke with a difficult expression. "I still have something to report. It's the Carey interstellar fleet that left planet Kree for an expedition. The interstellar ships have returned one after another. Over half of the ships were destroyed during this expedition. The Carey Legion's guards suffered disastrous casualties. Even the commander of this expedition was buried in outer space." "Okay, I already know." Luo Nan's face was as heavy as water. His eyes were filled with rage. No one knew what he was thinking. The captain of the guards asked gravely, "Lord Luo Nan, we provoked the new star in the past. Now that the Carey Legion has suffered such heavy losses, what should we do if the new star takes the opportunity to counterattack?" The other armed guards heard this and their hearts trembled. The palace hall fell into a deathly silence. Luo Nan gripped the Carey warhammer tightly and spoke in a deep voice, "What are you panicking for? Help me inform Titan Thanos that I know the whereabouts of the universal spiritual orb. If he wants to get it, then immediately send enough forces to assist me." "Yes, I'll contact them right away and pass on your request." The guard captain accepted the order, as if he knew that the situation was urgent, and quickly left the hall. The remaining armed guards cleaned up the mess in the hall and reignited the blue flame candles on both sides of the hall. The universal spirit orb. Thanos. Luo Nan muttered to himself. He was endlessly gloomy in his heart. If he had enough strength and was able to seize the spirit orb from Kale's hands, how could he be willing to give the spirit orb to Thanos? Thanos' strength and influence might be strong, but Luo Nan didn't want to be a chess piece. Luo Nan wanted to be the absolute controller of his own fate. "I have to reconsider." Luo Nan was thinking about the future when quite a few Carey guards suddenly cried out in alarm from the main hall below Supreme Stage. Luo Nan was in a trance for a moment. He looked towards the source of the sound as if he was startled awake. He saw that the floor of the main hall, which was still imprinted with teleportation runes, glowed with a subtle blue light for no reason. The light fell upon the original imprint of the Carey divine artifact, and the light formed a blue pillar of light in the center of the main hall. The other end of the spatial pillar of light broke through the void of the ceiling. It seemed to connect to a distant third dimension. The dozen or so Carey guards were stupefied. They didn't dare to approach the pillar of light. They retreated endlessly to create a safe distance. How can this be? This feeling is... Luo Nan's eyes widened in shock. The blue pillar of light stabilized, reflecting the tall figure of the silver-haired human youth. His body quickly recovered from its translucent state to its true state. Kale didn't look any different from before. He just changed his clothes, his hair was a bit longer and there was a little orange cat on his left shoulder. The blue beam of light dissipated inch by inch, and the main hall returned to its original gloomy darkness. Kale looked all around the main hall. He confirmed that they had returned to the original dimension and the original Carey Palace Hall. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. Heaven knows how many places they had passed through using the space gem before finally returning to the original dimensional universe in a seemingly accurate manner. Fortunately, the ending was good, and it seemed that not much time had passed in the original dimensional universe. The feeling of returning is really good. Kale sighed with emotion. He raised his head to meet Luo Nan's gaze on the throne. He couldn't help but wave his hand and the corner of his mouth rose into a smile as he said, "Hey Luo Nan. Long time no see." "No. For you, it should be several minutes." How is this possible?" Even with Luo Nan's firm and cold temperament, his face was deathly pale at this moment. His body trembled slightly. He didn't dare to believe that what had happened was reality. Luo Nan was actually able to return safely after being exiled to an unknown dimension. Was it so easy to break through and cross dimensional regions? What kind of life form dares to enter the Supreme Palace without permission? The other Carry guards in the main hall didn't know that the two had already gone through a contest. They saw Kale suddenly appear, and they stepped forward with weapons in hand with vigilance. They wanted to capture the outsider Kale. You dare. Kale maintained a smile on his face as he casually shot a glance at the Carry guards surrounding him. The Carry guards all stopped in their tracks and looked at each other in dismay. They felt a wave of mental pressure and the might of a king emanating from Kale's body. You brought her out as well? Luonan couldn't sit still any longer. He stood up from the throne in both anger and fear. Meow. The orange kitten on Kale's shoulder breathed out sleepily. It opened its small mouth, and a mass of mercury-like consciousness drilled out from between its teeth. Do you still recognize me? Soon after, an indifferent and fleeting voice suddenly rang out in the sea of consciousness of the Carry guards. This cold and indifferent voice was only directed at Luonan alone. And you, criminal Luonan. Luonan gripped the Carry warhammer hard. His knuckles turned white from gripping it so hard that they made cracking sounds. This was the situation he didn't want to see the most. The prerequisite for Luonan to become the Carry Emperor was to get rid of the Supreme Intellect. And now the Supreme Intellect had returned safely. This undoubtedly declared the destruction of Luonan's identity as the Carry Emperor. Supreme Intellect? The Carry guards in the main hall looked at the consciousness body in bewilderment. The weapons in their hands fell to the ground and soon their knees fell to the ground. They quickly changed sides and spoke in an incomparably frantic manner. Supreme Intellect. We were all forced by Luonan. Since Supreme Intellect has returned, it is destined to overthrow Luonan's tyranny. Right? That's right. Luonan's eyes turned completely red as he looked at Wuxia, who was his subordinate just a moment ago. He stared fixedly at Wuxia, who was now a traitor of the Supreme Wisdom. He raised the Chris warhammer in his hand high up in the air. Continue the banishment. Before Luonan could finish speaking, he saw a dazzling stream of light sweep across the main hall. It was like a flash of lightning. Kale, who was originally standing in the main hall, had already arrived in front of Luonan. His entire body was encircled with fused energy. His hand, enhanced by the strengthening of fusion energy, grabbed Luonan's neck. My apologies. The same move doesn't have any effect on me. Kale spoke in a calm whisper. As the fusion energy circulated, his hand suddenly exerted force and completely crushed Luonan's neck. He didn't even give Luonan the chance to use his artifact. He killed him in one strike. Chapter 407. Though his neck had been crushed by Kyle, Luonan didn't die immediately. His eyes were wide open, nearly popping out of their sockets. His expression was filled with resentment, and he seemed to want to say something with great difficulty. But as his life force dissipated, his consciousness darkened, and Kerr's warhammer fell to the floor with a clang. After Luonan let go of the warhammer, his body went limp from Kale's hand. He was clearly dead. Seeing Luonan killed in an instant, the Creed guards lowered their heads submissively. They held their breaths in shock, not daring to make a sound. The consciousness floated in the hall and spoke in the minds of the guards. You all saw it. The criminal Luonan has received the justice he deserved. The Creed Empire will return to its former peace and prosperity. Go and inform the upper echelons of the Creed Empire to come here immediately for a meeting. Yes, Supreme Wisdom. The Creed guards naturally did not dare to disobey. They obeyed and quickly left the hall. Mr. Kale. According to the agreement, the Creed Empire will treat you as the most important guest in the future, and you are not allowed to start a galactic war. The Supreme Wisdom's attitude towards Kale was very respectful. If the other upper echelons of the Creed Empire and Luonan saw this, they would be shocked to the extreme. It's fine as long as you don't provoke me. As for the Creed Empire, it has nothing to do with me. Kale said casually as he threw Luonan's corpse back onto the throne. He waved his hand and the Creed warhammer slowly flew into his hand. Seeing this, the Supreme Wisdom could not help but speak awkwardly. Mr. Kale, the Creed warhammer is the inherited artifact of our Creed civilization. It needs to be in the hands of the Creed to display its true power. Yes, I know. Kale patted the head of the orange cat on his shoulder. He picked up the warhammer and passed it to his left shoulder. The orange cat was confused, but it opened its mouth and swallowed the entire Creed warhammer. Kale smiled. That's my spoils of war from killing Luonan. I'll feed it to my Goldie. It's over. I met this interstellar bandit. The artifact is gone. The Supreme Wisdom cursed in its heart, but it laughed on the surface. Of course, as long as Mr. Kale likes it. All right. I won't interfere with your Carrie civilization's matters. Bye-bye. Kale waved his hand and circulated the fused energy in his body. Rings of flames rose from his body. Finally, he leaped up and flew toward the sky outside the palace. It was only when the trail of light dissipated that the true form of the Supreme Wisdom squirmed and exclaimed, "The human race is truly incredible. I'm afraid that Earth's civilization will rise rapidly soon." Milky Way Alliance, hundreds of millions of light-years away. Near the Titan star system, a gigantic spaceship the size of a planet was floating quietly in the dark outer sky, like a steel wall in the universe. Within the spacious cockpit of the interstellar spaceship, 5 powerful alien species of different races, weapons, and appearances stood side by side in the hall, waiting for orders. They gave off an oppressive aura. Among them, there was a muscular monster as strong as a giant with a metal axe, a dark-skinned woman with a shining spear, a white-haired old man with his hands behind his back, an ugly undead creature with a grim reaper's scythe, and a mysterious witch with a white glow in her eyes. Titan's 5 tiger generals. Every one of them was a strong person in the starry sky who could easily trample Luonan under their feet. At this moment, they all lowered their heads respectfully and looked at the high-tech chair in front of them. The chair floated in the air in the room, and as the chair slowly rotated, the person sitting on it was a tall and sturdy Titan man who was over 3 meters tall. He was wearing the Titan clothes that he was used to, and his skin was dark purple. His entire body was full of pressure and pressure that made one's heart tremble. Thanos held his chin and tapped his face with his fingers. He said calmly and hoarsely, "So, that child Goldie betrayed me?" The dark-skinned woman said respectfully, "Master, according to the current situation, it should be so. I suspect that she knows a few things about the Infinity Gem. Yeah, she's always been like this. She doesn't let people have peace of mind." Thanos tapped his finger on the chair. He didn't think too much and directly gave an order, "Supergiant, make a trip. Bring Goldie back to see me in one piece." "Yes, master." The dark-skinned woman nodded. She held her spear and raised her cloak as she left the command room. The white-haired old man said slowly, "Master, the Carrie Empire just sent news. Luonan said that he has grasped information about the Universal Orb. He now wants your protection and assistance." Thanos didn't procrastinate. He said in a deep voice, "Then make a trip, Ebony Throat. Bring the Universal Orb back to me." "Understood. I will definitely complete the mission." The white-haired old man bowed. His feet left the ground and he left the hall. After the two left, the hall fell silent once more. Thanos looked at the remaining 3 and said, "Is there anything else I need to know right now?" "Yes, master." The muscular monster said in a hoarse voice, "The dwarves have already finished forging the gloves that can control the Infinity Gem. They're waiting for you to inspect them." "Is that so? Has this day finally arrived?" Thanos grinned and ordered, "Black Short Star, you go and get the gloves back for me. Kill all the dwarfs while you're at it. Leave the Dwarf King alive, but you need to cut off his dominant hand for forging. Destroy the neutron star furnace for me as well." "I understand." The muscular monster lifted his giant axe and stomped on the floor. He dragged his bulky body out of the control room. There were only 2 subordinates left in the hall. "There's one more thing. It's about Earth." The mysterious witch spoke. The undead creature spoke in a sinister voice, "What a coincidence. I wanted to mention Earth as well." The 2 subordinates actually mentioned the same place at the same time. Thanos couldn't help but touch his chin. "Tell me about it." The mysterious witch said, "Last time the second prince of Asgard, Loki, didn't he talk to you? He is now leading the mechanical race to Earth. He said that he will bring the Rubik's Cube back to you to show his loyalty." The undead creature continued her words and said, "According to my investigation, the sorcerers of Earth have been holding the time gem for many years. In addition, recently, there have been traces of ether particles, which are the reality gems on Earth." "You mean there are 3 infinity gems on Earth?" Thanos' face changed slightly. He walked down from his seat and stood up to look at his 2 subordinates. "Yes, master. Loki may not be reliable. You can send me to Earth." The mysterious witch suggested, "I'm also willing to go to Earth." The undead creature nodded at the same time. "Very good, very good." Thanos was obviously in a good mood. He pondered for a moment, looked at his 2 subordinates and said in a deep voice, "Alpha Centauri, General Deathblade, then you 2 husband and wife will go and help me bring back all 3 gems." "Yes." Alpha Centauri and General Deathblade looked at each other, then bowed and left. Perhaps even Kale didn't expect that Thanos would send his capable subordinates to collect the Infinity Gems a few years earlier than originally. Chapter 408. Galaxy Alliance, New Star Empire. A ray of light was like a meteorite from outer space, entering the atmosphere at light speed. Even the satellite defense system and the New Star core were unable to react. The ray of light made a turn at an altitude of 1,000 meters, its speed decreasing as it headed straight for the Star Palace, the political center of the New Star Empire. Whew! The ray of light stopped abruptly when it reached the sky above the Star Palace. As the light of the fusion energy dissipated, Kale, who was wearing a spacesuit, was revealed. Alert, alert! External intrusion detected. The AI defense system sounded with a delay. Dozens of small aircrafts swarmed over, surrounding Kale, who was floating in the air. Huh! Kale raised his eyebrows. An aircraft arrived in front of Kale and emitted a scanning laser. After checking, it immediately removed the alert state and switched to a soft and gentle AI voice. Respected Mr. Kale, welcome back. The new Star Ruler has been notified. Please allow me to be your guide. The other security aircrafts scattered in all directions, leaving only one. After Kale nodded in agreement, the aircraft entered guide mode and brought him to the inner hall of the Star Palace. The Star Palace was the political center of the new star. Compared to the ancient palace of the Carey Empire, the Star Palace swept away the aura of barbarism. The building was completely made of metal and glass, with the aura of advanced technology flowing everywhere. Kale had just stepped into the hall when he saw the new star female ruler and a few officers of the new star corps, personally welcoming him. The new star ruler arrived in front of Kale, smiling so much that even the wrinkles on his face stretched out. Mr. Kale, the new star welcomes you. Looks like you've already received the news. Kale saw their enthusiasm and spoke indifferently. Yes. The new star ruler nodded and suddenly bowed, saying sincerely, Mr. Kale, you've killed Luo Nan and removed a huge scourge for our new star. On behalf of the entire new star, I offer my highest respect and gratitude to you. The high-ranking officers of the new star corps also bowed and thanked him. There's no need for that. Kale's face was calm as he waved his hand. This is just a transaction. To us, it's not as simple as a transaction. The new star ruler sighed. Luo Nan has done a lot of bad things in the Milky Way Alliance. He kept breaking the Milky Way peace agreement and tried to start an interstellar war. You killed him. Milky Way Alliance will treat this as a heroic achievement. Hero, I'm tired of working on Earth. Don't involve me in the Milky Way Alliance. Kyle shrugged nonchalantly, looked around and said, Where are my people? The new star head of state smiled. They've all been arranged to stay in the guest room on the second floor. Take me there. Thinking about what he was about to do, Kyle couldn't wait any longer. Star Palace, second floor, guest room. Star Ruler, Star was Star Ruler of the new star. One group was led by Kyle. They were Iron Man Tony, Magnetron Lorna, Pet by Bo, and Slave Green Peak. One group was led by Star-Lord Quill. They were Drax the Destroyer, Groot the Trey-Ant, Rocket the Brown Bear, and Galmola, Thanos' adopted daughter. Rocket sat on the sofa with his hands crossed over his chest. He looked at Star-Lord, Drax, and Galora and said, Speaking of which, Groot and I are just here for the bounty of the Universe Orb. Now that the Universe Orb is gone, why should I be with you guys? Drax snorted coldly and said in a deep voice, I'm here for revenge on Luo Nan. I will fight whoever is Luo Nan's enemy. Then you should sit on that side. Rocket's eyes drifted and motioned to Tani and others. That's true. Drax nodded and actually got up, left the sofa where Star-Lord and others were sitting, and sat down next to Tani. Okay, there's one less person. Rocket saw this and spread out his hands comically. Galora said coldly, Let's see if the man named Kale can kill Luo Nan. If he has that strength, maybe he can really fight against Thanos. So we are tied to them? Rocket showed a slightly puzzled expression. Being restrained and free is not what he pursues. I don't care. Mr. Kale is a human from Earth, so am I. Drax seemed very natural. He had no fixed residence in the Galaxy Alliance, so it made no difference where he went. Galora looked at Rocket and gave a suggestion. If you want to leave, you can go, but be careful. You have already been involved with the Infinity Stone and know Thanos' secret. Thanos men are likely to come to kill you. Thanos men? How powerful are they? I, Rocket, have never been afraid of them. Rocket patted Groot's chest as he spoke. Groot. The Tree Man shouted. Galora snorted and said, I admit that the Tree Man is very powerful, but compared to Thanos men, they are not on the same level. That man has the 5 tiger generals and each of them is stronger than Luo Nan. Stronger than Luo Nan? Rocket blinked and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He thought about it and sat back on the sofa. Then I'll stay with you. If those people come, you have to block them for me. Don't worry, Mr. Kale is here. Quill was obviously a boaster. On Earth, the influence of the symbol of peace was so great that it had gradually become deified. Everyone was still talking when the door suddenly opened, and Kale walked into the reception room at the front. Boss. Lorna was still holding Bai Bo in her hand, but when she saw Kale, she immediately jumped up, threw Bai Bo back to the sofa and rushed forward. Godfather. Tani's taut face relaxed a bit, and he put down the steel mask in his hand. He was prepared to go to the Nemesis Empire to reinforce them at any time. Kale had a smile on his face as he hugged Lorna. Everyone in the room stood up and looked at him expectantly. The new star leader walked forward in a dignified manner and said slowly, "Everyone, Luo Nan has been killed by Mr. Kale. According to the terms of the deal, some of your wanted posters will be removed, and you will be our new star's first-class VIP. You will receive the protection of the new star army and all kinds of special privileges." That's great. For many people present, losing Luo Nan's oppression and gaining the friendship of the new star empire was a pleasant surprise. Especially Drax the Destroyer, who immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Kale a few times, promising, "Mr. Kale, you have avenged me. No matter what it is in the future, I will do it as long as you say the word. Get up." Kale waved his hand, and the force field helped Drax's body up. "Godfather, then we're going to." Tani looked at him, his words nervous and excited. "It's been so many years. It's about time." Kale smiled in relief and he turned to look at Quill, saying forcefully, "Quill, we're going to set off now. You lead the way. We're going to the planet where Howard is." One of his long-cherished wishes of many years had finally come true. Chapter 409. Galaxy Alliance, Pico Star, located in a remote corner of civilization. This was a planet that had experienced the prosperity of a new star. Later, due to the excessive population base of the local race, the energy and food on the planet were exhausted, and it eventually became a deserted planet that went extinct. Because there was no energy collection on Pico Star, only the technological civilization garbage from a few centuries ago was left. High-level civilizations and even interstellar hunters would not set foot here. Only some poor wandering aliens were forced to live here. Today, this barren Pico Star once again welcomed a special guest from outer space after a long time. The skinny alien child, dressed in ragged clothes, carried a backpack and rummaged through the garbage mountain. He found a relatively intact t-shirt and immediately put it on happily, as if this was already a gift from God. He clasped his hands together and thanked the sunset sky. At this moment, 2 starlights emerged from the sky. In the alien child's bewildered eyes, the starlights grew bigger and bigger, and finally turned into an Eagle space warship and an Orange space warship. The 2 space warships continued to descend and finally stopped in midair on the garbage mountain where the alien child was. The Orange space warship's hatch opened. Star-Lord Quill adjusted his clothes and walked to the hatch. He said to the alien child below, "Hey kid, I want to ask you something." The alien child shivered in fright and took a few steps back to hide behind a large garbage instrument. Quill rubbed his nose awkwardly. In the cockpit behind him, Galora could not help but shake his head. The brown bear Rocket walked out happily and took the opportunity to sneer at Quill's calf. "You can't even handle a child. Watch me." Rocket came to the hatch and coughed. The alien child suddenly revealed an eye and peeked at him. Rocket grinned in a friendly manner and suddenly raised the energy gun on his back. He said fiercely, "Little brat, if you don't want to die, tell us everything you know." Before he could finish speaking, Rocket was grabbed by a hand from behind and thrown back. "You two can't be like this." That person was Gola. She walked like a cat and gently jumped from the space warship onto the garbage mountain. "Don't worry, we won't hurt you." Gola came to the side of the trembling alien child. She, who usually killed without batting an eye, was surprisingly gentle in front of the child. She took out a red apple from her pocket and handed it over. The alien child looked at the apple and swallowed his saliva. After Gola nodded, the child grabbed the apple with both hands, opened his mouth and wolfed it down. He even ate the seeds. After eating the apple, the alien child calmed down and asked, "What do you want to know?" Gola said gently, "Our warship has some problems. I heard that there's a mechanic called Howard here who can repair space warships. Are you looking for Master Howard?" The alien kid laughed and said, "That's right. His repair skills are the best in our world. He lives at the foot of the mountain not far from here. I'll take you there." As he spoke, the alien child made a face at Quill and Rocket. That little brat. Rocket gritted his teeth and rolled up his sleeves. He wanted to go all out, but he was quickly stopped by Quill. Okay. It's good that you found the location. Don't lower yourself to the child's level. On another Eagle warship. Kale saw that Gola and the alien child had reached a consensus and nodded. Looks like they've found the location. Clang. The sound of metal falling to the ground came from the lounge behind. Tani was still anxiously shouting, "Jarvis, quickly help me take off the lower half of my battle suit. I want to change my clothes." "Yes, sir," Jarvis responded. Then there was another sound of metal being removed. Kale and Lorna looked at each other and smiled knowingly. They had waited for this day for too long. Even Tani, who was still a child in the past, had wrinkles and a beard. "You're looking forward to it too, boss." Lorna reached out her hands and held Kale's left palm, feeling the heat and trembling. "Yes, it's really been a long time. Howard, Logan, and Lucy." Kale sighed. Seeing the nervous look on Lorna's face, he held her hand and said slowly, "Don't worry, Lucy will accept you and Yutong. No matter what." Yutong and Lorna, these two women, had accompanied Kyle all the way through wind, rain, frost, and snow. He couldn't give them up so easily. If they wanted to stay, Kale had no reason to refuse. While marching to the top of the universe's evolutionary chain, he couldn't have any regrets. Otherwise, in the end, he would be like Thanos, Domum, and Alpha Centauri, living alone forever. "Boss." Lorna's heart trembled and tears almost flowed out of her eyes. She had waited for this sentence for too long. South of Pico Planet, there was a building that was pieced together from various civilizations' trash. It was 20 meters tall and had a unique interior and exterior. Compared to the surrounding trash mountains, this building was luxurious beyond recognition. There were even Stark and SHLD logos on the signboard. A sun chair was placed in front of the building's entrance. A white-haired old man in casual clothes was lying on it, bathing in the sunlight that was filtered through layers of protection. His face was covered with a beauty mask, and the old radio beside him was playing dance music from the 19th century on Earth. Grandpa Howard, you have business?" The alien child ran over from afar and kept waving his arms, shouting from dozens of meters away. "What business? You're disturbing my rest again." Howard pouted unhappily and removed the mask. When he saw two space warships flying in the sky, he quickly stood up. One is a Space Hunter warship that was repaired before, and the other is a space warship from an extraterrestrial civilization? Howard murmured and took a few steps forward. The two space warships stopped in the open space in front of the building one after another, raising bursts of yellow dust. The cabin of the Star-Lord was the first to open. Quill came down from inside and smiled at Howard. "Sir, I haven't seen you for a few years. You still look strong." "What? Little Star-Lord, are you here to introduce me to business?" Howard blinked. "No." Quill shook his head. He gestured to the Eagle. "You have a few old friends who came to the Milky Way Alliance to look for you. I brought them over." "Old friends?" Howard looked at Quill, puzzled. Then his gaze landed on the Eagle. The cabin door opened, and a silver-haired young man walked out just like that. You are..." The moment Howard saw the silver-haired young man, he was completely stunned. His old body trembled slightly and his mouth moved, but no sound came out. The young man's face was handsome as if it was carved by a knife. His silver hair draped over his shoulders, and his tall body had a golden ratio. His aura was always indifferent and extremely oppressive, just like the invincible Major General hero from decades ago. If only life was like the first time we met. The young man in front of him was almost exactly the same as the young man from back then. Howard stared blankly. If it weren't for the alien child shaking his arm, he would have thought that this was all a dream. "What's wrong, have you forgotten about me?" Kale came forward and looked at his old friend who was 30 or 40 years older than back then. He said softly, "Long time no see, Howard, I'm here to fulfill the appointment." This appointment was half a century late, and there were still hundreds of millions of light years away. Chapter 410. Everything had happened too suddenly. Rather than saying that it was a surprise, it was more of a shock. The outer space of Marvel's human world was too vast and boundless. The distance between Earth and the Milky Way Alliance was more than hundreds of millions of light years. Finding a person was undoubtedly harder than finding a needle in a haystack. Howard and his group set off from Earth and wandered in space for many years. They had repeatedly doubted whether they could find Kale for countless days and nights. In the end, they did not even have any hope of returning to their hometown on Earth. When all hope was gradually shattered, Howard resigned himself to his fate and lived on the deserted Pico Star. When his body was getting old, Kale appeared in front of him without warning. Howard couldn't help but take a few steps forward and look directly at Kale. He asked in a trembling voice, "Master, is it really you? I'm not dreaming, am I?" "Old gentleman, it's not easy to find you." Kale smiled in relief. Howard also smiled happily. The corners of his eyes were slightly moist. He stretched out his withered left hand and placed it on Kale's strong shoulder. "This sentence should be said by us. It's really not easy to find you." Quill, Bo, and the others looked on silently. Kale and Howard only had a few words of emotion, but it contained difficulties and hardships that ordinary people could not understand. When Kale was seriously ill and left Earth, he narrowly escaped death in the starry sky before he regained his lifespan and a new future. Howard, as a mere mortal, had obviously experienced countless hardships before he finally found shelter in the dangerous Milky Way Alliance. "You seem to have aged quite a bit." Kale looked at Howard's hair. It was full of frost. This was because his vitality was close to exhaustion. Howard had mastered the infinite formula to slow down aging. There was no reason for him to fall to this point. "It's a long story." Howard sighed and looked at Kale from head to toe. He was happy for him. "You look the same as before. Young and strong, full of vitality. The nuclear radiation mutation in your body should have been completely cured, right?" "Yes, I have become a god." Kale blinked calmly. When Howard was stunned, he patted him on the shoulder and gestured behind him. "Not only me, there's another person who left Earth for you." "Huh?" Howard looked in the direction of the gesture and saw Tani standing not far behind Kale at the door of the Eagle battleship, as if he did not have the courage to step forward. At this time, Tony had already removed his combat suit. He was wearing a suit and tie and his hair was combed straight. He looked like a mature gentleman. Tony took a deep breath and stepped forward. He coughed to conceal his emotions. "Other than me, who else would look for an old man like you? You're dressed so formally. It's really not your style." Howard looked at Tani and suddenly smiled. "You too, Dad." Tani and Howard looked at each other and did not say anything. They actually smiled nervously. Seeing this, Rocket jumped to Quill's shoulder and whispered in her ear. "Say, are all people in science and technology so rational and reserved? Do you want me to shoot a few shots into the sky to celebrate?" Quill was inexplicably sad. She covered Rocket's mouth with her hand and snorted. Their father and son reunited. "You'd better stop." After Howard and Tani were reunited, Kale looked at the building in front of him and did not sense the presence of other people. He could not help but ask Howard, "Howard, where are Lucy and Logan? Didn't the three of you leave Earth together?" Hearing this, Howard's face turned pale. He walked past Tani and held Kale's shoulder with both hands. He lowered his head in shame. "I'm sorry, Kale. I'm very sorry. What happened to them?" Facing Howard's reaction, Kale's face was still calm, but his hands were clenched tightly. The fused energy was slightly unstable and overflowing on the surface of his body. It was as if he was in a dormant state of an active volcano, with the possibility of erupting at any time. Despite the risk of being burned by the fused energy, Howard still did not let go of Kale's shoulder. It was as if he wanted to be forgiven. "Godfather," Tani called out uneasily. When Quill and the others saw this, they did not dare to intervene. They could only watch in bewilderment. The alien child, on the other hand, was shocked. He subconsciously retreated until he reached where Gola was. He took a deep breath and secretly looked at Kyle. "That person is so scary. I almost couldn't breathe just now." Lorna walked to Kale's side and gently stroked his back with her palm. She softly said, "Boss, calm down." Kale was in a daze for a moment before he nodded and said to Howard, "Sorry, I lost my composure. I'm the one who should apologize. It's my powerlessness. I couldn't protect Lucy and save Logan." Howard's body kept trembling as if he was recalling bad memories. His eyes were filled with fear, timidity, anger, sadness, and helplessness. "Are they dead? Who did it?" Kale narrowed his eyes. There was a cold, murderous intent brewing in his body. "I don't know. Maybe they're dead, maybe they're still alive." Howard raised his head and looked around at everyone. He waved his hand toward the building and said hoarsely, "Let's go in first. I'll tell you everything." Kale did not speak or do anything. Rocket winked at Quill and jumped onto the tray ant. He tried to smooth things over. "My Groot is thirsty. He wants to go in and drink water." Yeah, we're all acquaintances. Let's go in and have a chat. Quill received the hint and hurriedly agreed to smooth things over. With Rocket and Quill easing the atmosphere, Kale and the others followed Howard into the building and sat down in the large living room on the second floor. Back then, Lucy, Logan, and I, because you hadn't returned to Earth for a long time, we had the idea of going out into space to look for you. Howard did not procrastinate and directly described what happened when the three of them formed an interstellar group and went out to Earth. Kale listened carefully. Howard continued. Along the way we encountered many difficulties. But with Logan as a strong bodyguard and some of my advanced technological weapons, we managed to get through the difficulties without any mishaps. Kale secretly nodded. After Logan's body was implanted with adamantium, his combat power was top-notch. 5 years after leaving Earth, we arrived at the Milky Way Alliance. We were amazed by the civilization here. It was a difficult but beautiful time. We wanted to settle down here temporarily and use the rich information network of the Milky Way Alliance to look for your whereabouts. When Howard said this, there was a hint of a smile on his face. However, the smile disappeared very quickly. We became interstellar hunters and took on missions from some civilizations. While earning money, we also tried to find out more about you. But that was the beginning of all misfortune. Kale quietly clenched his fist. Beside him, Lorna placed her hands on his fist to comfort him. 5 years ago, we received an intermediary mission that required us to go to a planet and build a palace-like building in the style of Earth. Howard's face was very ugly. He looked at Kale and gritted his teeth. There we met a man. He was the master of that planet. His name was Igo. He was from the deity race. Chapter 411. Deity race? In the hall on the second floor, which was full of people, everyone was stunned when they heard Howard's words. Deity race. Obviously, everyone knew this, but it was precisely because they had heard of it that they felt even more incredulous. After all, the deity race was an ancient race that only existed in legends. It was rumored that the deity race had already been born in the early universe long before many civilizations and forces had risen, and various alien races were still in the Enlightenment stage. Each of them had the power of a star and a strong vitality of millions of years. But tens of thousands of years ago, the deity race had faded away, and few people had seen them again. Some people even judged that the deity race had long been extinct in the universe. No one noticed that after Howard said the name Igo, Star-Lord Quill fell into silence. No one knew what he was thinking. Old Mr. Howard, are you sure you met the deity race? That's a legendary ancient organism. Green Peak asked in surprise. It can't be wrong. Howard nodded and said firmly, this is what Igo said himself. Later, I did some research and completely confirmed his identity. He is the only deity race member left in the universe. Howard, what happened? Kale narrowed his eyes. The information he knew about the deity race was no less than that of the people present. Howard said slowly, after the three of us took the intermediary mission, we drove the spaceship away from the central area of the Milky Way Alliance and arrived at a life planet covered in green plants and abundant resources. As the master of the planet, Igo received us with great hospitality and told us a love story. Love story? Rocket blinked. Yes, a love story. A story about a deity race man and a human woman falling in love. When Howard said this, Quill suddenly trembled slightly and held his head with both hands, causing Gola, who was sitting next to him, to cast a puzzled look. Lorna covered her mouth with her hand and asked in surprise, could it be that the deity race man named Igo has been to Earth? Yes. Howard nodded and said, in the 19th century not only did Igo go to Earth, he also lived there as a human for a short period of time. He fell in love with a woman named Meredith and gave birth to a baby boy. This is impossible. Quill raised his head abruptly. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Howard. He repeated, this is impossible. How could this be? The others looked at Quill in surprise. They didn't know what had triggered Quill to make him show such a big reaction. Sit tight, Quill. Kale looked up and pressed down with his left hand. Quill, who had wanted to charge at Howard, was pulled back to his original position by an invisible force. Tani came to Howard's side cautiously, afraid that the agitated Quill would hurt his father. Howard's face was calm as he looked at Quill and said, child, this is the truth. Quill gritted his teeth and didn't speak. Quill, why are you having such a big reaction? You aren't the hybrid of the deity race and human, are you? Then you should have an extra pair of wings. Wait, does the deity race have wings? Rocket and Drax were joking as they laughed heartily. However, halfway through their laughter, they noticed that everyone else was silent and they suddenly stopped laughing. In the hall on the second floor, the atmosphere was strange and awkward for a while. It can't be true, right? Rocket looked at Quill's ugly face and opened his mouth exaggeratedly. Yes. Howard calmly stated, the human baby boy who inherited the bloodline of the deity race. His name is Peter Quill, the Star-Lord in front of you. When the truth was announced, the others were shocked. Quill clenched his fists and shook his head fiercely. My father is a human from Earth. He disappeared when I was a child. It is impossible for him to be from the deity race. Then have you ever thought about why you were brought to the Galaxy Alliance by the interstellar hunters? Also, is your body different from other ordinary humans? Howard casually pointed out 2 points and said lightly, in fact, when I repaired your starship last time, I had already taken your blood for research and confirmed that you and Igo were father and son. Believe it or not, you can contact the interstellar hunter who brought you to the Galaxy Alliance and get verification from him. After Howard finished speaking, Quill had already believed most of it in his heart, but he was unwilling to admit this fact and said coldly, I will verify it. Kale had an indifferent expression as if he had already known and said coldly, Howard, you continue. What did Igo of the deity race do to you later? Howard sneered and said, Igo said that he had an urgent matter and had to leave Earth. When he returned again, Meredith had already passed away due to a tumor. In order to commemorate his wife, Igo wanted the 3 of us to build an Earth-style building on his planet. In that case, that Igo still had some human feelings, Bo commented, and the others nodded in secret approval. The deity race, who had super strong abilities and a lifespan of millions, mourned the memory of an Earth woman. This was not at all inferior to the absolute love of a god in a movie. Haha, human feelings? Howard sneered and his expression turned ugly. He said resentfully, at first we thought so too. Thus, we agreed to Igo's request and temporarily stayed on that planet to prepare for the design and construction. It was also because of this that we inadvertently discovered Igo's secret. What secret? Kale asked the question on everyone's mind. Howard took a deep breath and said, that life-bearing planet that seemed to be rich in resources, under the blooming flowers and green plants, was full of skeletons of all kinds of creatures. It turned out that as a member of the deity race, Igo's planet was his body and needed a large amount of resources and nutrients to support it. Thus, he constantly lured creatures to his planet and used their bodies and the materials on the alien ship as fertilizer to cultivate the planet. What? Hearing this, everyone present gasped. By the time we found out, it was already too late. Howard said bitterly, Igo could perceive what was happening on the entire planet. When we wanted to pilot the ship to escape, we discovered that it had already been damaged. With no other choice, we launched a battle with Igo. Naturally, we weren't a match for the deity race. In the end, Logan and Lucy fought for a chance for me to escape. I was able to pilot a dilapidated ship and escape. After losing Logan and Lucy as well as the original ship, and without the materials for the infinite formula, I quickly entered the stage of aging. In the past 5 years, I threw myself into research every day and night to find a way to kill the deity race. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the face to explain myself to you. This is everything you wanted to know. After Howard finished speaking, he gazed at Kale with a sorrowful expression and waited for his response. Understood. Chapter 412. What's wrong? Looking at everyone's shocked expression, Kale's pair of golden eyes did not reveal any emotion. He said coldly, Igo attacked my people, so I'm going to take revenge now. There's nothing strange about this, right? This. Everyone was speechless. Indeed, this logic couldn't be more normal and reasonable. It's just that, the other party wasn't some random cat or dog that could be killed. That was the legendary deity clan. I'll go back to the space shuttle first. Star-Lord Quill's eyelids twitched violently, and he couldn't sit still in the hall. Although Quill still didn't fully believe that his father was Igo of the deity clan and had done so many heartless bad things, Kale was obviously ready to take action against Igo. If this dragged on, Igo would no longer exist. Quill thought of this, got up without saying a word, walked out of the hall and rushed downstairs to the space shuttle. He wanted to contact the interstellar hunter who brought him to the Milky Way Alliance as a child, Yondu, and ask Yondu about the inside story and the truth. No one stopped Quill's departure as if they didn't see it. Their thoughts were still sluggish about Kale's revenge. Patriarch, I know you want to take revenge for Logan and Lucy, and so do I. Howard was the first to break the silence. He looked at Kale solemnly, afraid that he would rush to his death on impulse. He said in a deep voice, But that man is from the deity clan at the top of the Milky Way's combat power pyramid, a high-dimensional life with the power of a star. It's far from being as easy to deal with as the Hydra soldiers on Earth. Kale was unmoved. He stood indifferently in the middle of the hall, as if he didn't hear Howard's persuasion. His whole body was filled with cold killing intent and oppression. Tani, advise your godfather not to act rashly. Howard patted Tani's hand, and Tani suddenly showed an innocent expression. Howard took a deep breath and continued to persuade Kale, Patriarch, you must know. In the vast Milky Way alliance, for example, the Carey Empire, even their ordinary people had the combat power of super soldiers. What's more, the deity race is superior to the Kree people in every aspect. The Kree are very strong? Kale didn't say anything, but the expressions on the others' faces became very interesting. Howard looked at them in surprise and asked, What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? He looked at his son with a questioning gaze. The corner of Tani's mouth rose confidently as he smiled. Father, you don't know, right? Godfather is very strong now. He was ridiculously strong. The so-called Kree people can't be compared to them. When Howard heard this, he looked at Kale in bewilderment. Indeed, the Patriarch's aura was different from before. Moreover, the Patriarch had said that he had become a god. Becoming a god, what kind of concept was that? Mr. Howard. Green Peak, who was a slave, smiled. He knew that this was a great opportunity to bootlick. He couldn't help but compliment, you don't know. Not long ago, Master Kale fought the Carey Empire's interstellar fleet alone. In the end, he broke into the supreme palace of planet Carey alone and killed the Carey Empire's controller, Ronan. Killed Ronan? Howard was shocked. Bo also nodded and said emotionally, not only that. In order to save me, Mr. Kale broke the New Star Army's battleship defense net with one kick. But now, the New Star Empire treats Mr. Kale as the highest VIP and needs the New Star leader to personally receive him. Broke the New Star Army's defense net with one kick? And the New Star leader to personally receive him? The exaggerated battle record made Howard a little confused. He looked at Lorna, who was a normal human woman, as if he was asking for confirmation. Lorna's face was full of smiles, as if the object of everyone's praise was her. She looked gently at Kale and said softly, Yes, Uncle Howard. Boss even took back the Carey Empire's divine artifact as his spoils of war. Is this true, family head? Howard's entire body began to tremble. He looked at Kale with incomparable expectation, wanting to hear him admit it personally. Kale said indifferently, Howard, you can't be thinking that I'm still stuck on the path of evolution after so long, right? This is really great. Howard suddenly stood up. His withered hands grabbed Kale's hand tightly. He changed his previous cautious compromise and gnashed his teeth as he said hoarsely, Family head, you must avenge Lucy and Logan. You don't need to say it. I'll make him pay 100-fold. Kale narrowed his eyes and put his hand on Howard's shoulder. He seemed to have sensed something and said inexplicably, Actually, I don't think that Lucy and Logan are dead. What do you mean? Not only the others but even Howard, as the person involved, looked at Kale with doubts. I won't hide it from you. My body had fused with the space gem for a period of time. After absorbing the energy overflowing from the space gem, it fused with the fire divine power in my body to form a brand new strange energy. Kale snapped his fingers lightly. Dazzling light arcs leaped out of his fingertips, flashing and glowing with terrifying power. How is this possible? Even Thanos has to indirectly control the power of the gem by forging a divine artifact. Gola looked at Kale in disbelief, as if he had seen a monster's horrified expression. This is the truth. Through this fused energy I can increase my body's superpower and become a double-star state. In outer space I can reach the speed of light and even jump out of the original dimensional space to ignore distance. Kale closed his eyes and a white light flashed through his eyes. He gazed at Howard and said, Howard, when I touched you just now, I seem to have sensed the weak existence of Lucy and Logan through you. Howard couldn't help but say excitedly, So you're saying that Lucy and Logan might still be alive, or they might be imprisoned somewhere on the planet by Igo? That's very possible. But regarding this I'll have to ask Igo in detail. Kale stroked his chin and thought for a while. He said in a deep voice, Howard, you've been hiding here for the past few years and have conducted in-depth research on the deity race. Have you discovered anything? For example, their weaknesses and killing methods. Yes. Howard nodded straightforwardly and said coldly, I've had contact with Igo before. In addition, I've collected information in the starry skies these past few years and obtained Quill's blood. I've made a major discovery. Tell me about it. Kale nodded. After obtaining the energy of the space gem, he wasn't conceited enough to be invincible in the starry skies. Moreover, the enemy he was facing was the only remaining deity race in the universe. Howard sat back in his seat and said solemnly, the first batch of deity race didn't rely on reproduction to be born. Instead, they were formed from the transformation of the vital planet into self-consciousness. Although they have an almost infinite lifespan, they also need a lot of resources to maintain it. Otherwise, they will also reach the end of extinction. This is the reason why the deity race continued to die after the rise of many civilizations and forces. They were on the verge of extinction. The deity race is the vital planet. Kale nodded. This was similar to his impression. Howard continued, Igo not only robbed other creatures and planets of their vitality, but also expanded his territory. He also created an incarnation that could leave the planet and mate with women of other races. He wanted to give birth to a brand new deity race individual. The existence of Star-Lord Quill is the evidence. Rocket shivered all over and complained, I want to ask how it feels to be F***ed by a planet. Chapter 413. Destroyed by a planet? Everyone on the second floor couldn't help but sweat profusely when they heard this. Probably only Rocket, who had a jumpy mind, would think of such an insignificant point at this moment. If Quill was here, he would probably blow up your fluffy head, little brown bear. Drax, who was half naked, felt deeply disgusted. He crossed his arms and shivered. By the way, where's Star-Lord Quill? Howard noticed that Quill had left the area of the second floor hall at some point in time. If he was here, why would I complain so casually? Rocket grinned. Just now Mr. Kale said that he was going to kill Igo and that guy left the hall. He probably returned to the space warship and looked for Yondu, the interstellar hunter who raised him, to verify. He looks stubborn and doesn't admit it, but his body is very honest. Before he finished speaking, the building where everyone was suddenly trembled. Then, Star-Lord's space warship, which was parked outside, ignited its engine accompanied by a strong wave of dust. The orange space warship floated in the air and accelerated straight towards the starry sky. He actually left us and left by himself? Rocket's face froze. Galmola shook her head, her dark red hair swaying like a rattled drum. She, who had always disliked Quill, actually spoke up for him at this time. The interstellar signal on this planet is not very good. He may have gone to a nearby planet for video communication. That's more like it. Rocket snorted. Howard's face turned solemn. Wait, we shouldn't let Star-Lord leave alone now. If Igo finds him, it'll be bad. That Igo of the deity race is trying to find an alien woman to cultivate his descendants. Is he trying to revive the prosperity of the deity race in the past? Drax the Destroyer was slightly surprised. Now, their destroyer race had been slaughtered by Luonan. They were also a race on the verge of starry sky. No. That man only pays attention to his own great cause of expansion. How could he let the collective interests of his race take precedence over himself? Howard shook his head. The deity race can control the power in their bodies and plant their own seeds on other planets. The seeds will lurk like tumor cells, waiting for the day to achieve their goal of annexing the starry sky. Lorna quickly realized what was going on and asked in surprise, so, there are seeds planted by him on Earth too? Howard nodded. That's not all. I'm afraid that Igo has planted his seeds on thousands of life planets. But in the past decade or so, he suddenly stopped and began to focus on searching for traces of Quill. Such a guy would never be delayed by a father-son relationship. I'm afraid that Star-Lord Quill has something he needs to awaken the germination of the seed. Kale said coldly. That's right, I think so too. Howard nodded and said, I'm guessing that Igor can't swallow a planet with his own divine power, so he nurtured Quill to borrow the divine power from him to achieve his ultimate goal. As long as we kill Igo before he absorbs Quill's divine power, we'll be done, right? Kyle looked at Howard seriously. It was obvious that he couldn't wait any longer. Howard nodded in agreement and said slowly, Fortunately, Quill hasn't awakened his divine power yet, so Igo hasn't found him yet. This might be the interstellar hunter named Yondu hiding and protecting Quill in the dark. That's simple. We'll knock Quill out and trap him in the basement of this building. Rocket laughed and took out an instrument from his trouser pocket and quickly operated it. Out of professional habit, I installed a tracker on Quill's space warship. Now let me see where he went. After Rocket finished operating, he looked at the cursor on the screen and smiled. Quill piloted the space warship and indeed ran to the next planet. You can rest assured. Wait, the space warship suddenly moved. Let me see. Howard stretched out his hand and Rocket decisively handed over the tracker. After Howard received the tracker, he took out the black-rimmed glasses from his jacket pocket and put them on before looking at the instrument screen. He's leaving in the opposite direction of our planet. Howard was flabbergasted when the cursor on the screen flickered and disappeared without a trace. He said with a solemn expression, "He activated a space jump and arrived at another distant galaxy. This time he really abandoned you." Drax laughed and looked at Rocket and Galmola, who had ugly expressions. "Give me the tracker, I'll chase him back." Kale suddenly had a bad premonition. He stood up from his seat without hesitation and took the tracker from Howard. After thinking for a while, he turned to Galmola and said, "After we settle the matter with the deity race, I'll go with you to get the soul gem." Galmola nodded and replied, "No problem." Seeing that Kale was about to leave, Howard said anxiously, "Patriarch, you only know the general direction he left in. How are you going to chase him with a space warship?" "Who said I'm going to chase him with a space warship?" The corners of Kale's mouth curled up. Holding the tracker, dazzling energy began to flow on the surface of his body. Suddenly, he took off in the hall and his body turned into a dazzling stream of light. He smashed through the glass on the balcony on the second floor, and his flying speed increased dramatically as he chased after his target. "This is too illogical," Howard muttered in a low voice as he stared blankly at Kyle's disappearing figure. "Father, you'll get used to it." Tawny touched his mustache. Kale broke through the atmosphere at the speed of light and entered the vast outer space. He flew at the speed of light at full power and chased in the direction where the signal disappeared. Countless dim and bright starlight blurred and passed by on both sides. "Star-Lord, what are you trying to do?" Kale narrowed his eyes and looked at the tracker while passing through the universe area at an extremely fast speed. 5 minutes ago. Not far from Pico Star, the neighboring star, Tatata Star. Quill landed the space warship next to a quiet forest lake and saw that the interstellar signal had returned to a green light. After taking a few deep breaths to calm down, he began to make an interstellar contact dialing in the pilot's seat. A few seconds later, on the holographic projection of the video communication, a blue-skinned, bald, middle-aged alien with a medal inlaid on his forehead appeared. With a straight face he scolded Quill. "Brat, you're finally willing to take the initiative to contact me? Where are you now? Are you still alive?" "Of course I'm still alive." Although Quill was scolded, his heart was warm, knowing that Yondu's words were sharp but his heart was soft. "Come back if you're still alive? Do you still want to continue to show off outside? By the way, you still have the universe orb on you, bring it back to me, I heard it's very valuable." Yondu snorted. "Yondu." Quill suddenly shouted and asked straightforwardly, "Was it my father who asked you to bring me to the Milky Way when I was a child?" Yondu's expression changed slightly and he said, "Why do you ask this?" "My father." Quill's voice trembled slightly and he said, "Is his name Igo?" "It seems that you already know." Yondu gasped lightly, looked at Quill and simply admitted, "Yes. But there is a reason for all of this." Yondu was only halfway through his words when the video suddenly froze, and the connection was forcibly interrupted, as if the signal had been strongly interfered with. Yondu? Quill patted the equipment instrument, and while he was wondering, in front of the windshield of the space warship, the lake waves began to churn outward from the center. A small silver star shuttle slowly docked on the lake, and on top of the star shuttle, a middle-aged man with a beard stood on it leisurely, using the star shuttle to travel through the universe as a skateboard. Chapter 4:14. The middle-aged man stood on the silver star shuttle that looked like a skateboard. His hair and beard had been dyed white by the passage of time. Obviously he was already a certain age and was entering the old age stage of life. The door of Star-Lord's space warship opened, and Quill, who was fully armed and wearing an oxygen helmet, jumped out of the space warship's cockpit with 2 guns in his hands. He looked at the middle-aged man who parked the star shuttle on the lake with vigilance and asked coldly, "Who are you?" "Quill, after so many years I finally found you." The middle-aged man sighed and turned around. His eyes were as bright as the starry sky as he stared at Quill affectionately. Their eyes met and Quill's heart felt like it was hit. His hand holding the gun trembled violently as he said in disbelief, "You are..." The middle-aged man nodded gently and smiled. "Yes, I'm your father Igo." "How could it be?" Quill murmured and subconsciously put down his gun. Igo saw this and a kind smile appeared on his face. "I've let you suffer, my child." Quill was stunned for a moment before his eyes sharpened. He growled like a wounded beast, "Where have you been all these years?" Do you know that when Mother was critically ill, she was still calling your name when she held my hand? I was forced to leave. Igo sighed. Quill took a deep breath and calmed down. He looked at Igo and said in a deep voice, I have a lot of questions to ask you about my mother and me. No problem, but this is not a good place for family reunion. Igo looked around at the forest wilderness, pointed to the star shuttle below him and suggested, I'll take you to my territory planet. There, I can tell you everything you want to know. Quill had too many unanswered questions about his father's strange disappearance when he was young. His mother suddenly became seriously ill, and he was taken away from Earth by aliens. Now that he met Igo, who had been confirmed as his biological father, he naturally had no reason to refuse. Quill looked at the star shuttle and then at the space warship. He hesitated and said, I can, but I still have some friends on nearby planets. Igo smiled. It's okay, come with me. After a day you can come back and arrange for your friends. Or at that time, you can invite them to go to our planet's territory. All right then. Quill hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. Very quickly EGE's star shuttle took the space warship that Quill was piloting. They performed a space jump one after another and headed towards a galaxy outside of the Milky Way Alliance. At this time Kale was still flying in outer space. Since he did not know his specific location, and the tracker only worked in the same galaxy, he could only move in the direction where the signal disappeared. Flying at superluminal speed was already far beyond the space warships and spaceships with the most advanced technology. Sometimes even space warships would need to fly for a few months, but now Kale had completed it in less than 10 minutes. After traversing countless galaxies, the tracker's green light finally flashed, and a warship-shaped cursor appeared on the screen. Kale looked at the screen as he flew and muttered to himself, the space warship has stopped. Has it arrived at a planet? The location is not far ahead. Following the guidance of the cursor, Kale began to slow down. Soon he stopped in outer space outside the destination planet. His body was still shining with a scorching light, but when he saw the scene of the planet in front of him, Kale's scalp went numb and he sucked in a breath of cold air. Lying in front of him was a planet no smaller than Earth. It was green and blue with exuberant vitality, but its overall shape was very much like the head of a middle-aged man. The mountains and rivers also made the facial features, such as the facial features, mouth and nose, look very lifelike. This is Sky God. I'm still one step too late. What a coincidence that guy just happened to find Quill. Kale narrowed his eyes, thought for a moment, and activated the stealth skill that he had not used for a long time. The dark fog shrouded his overflowing body, and then he landed on the planet at the speed of a normal space warship. Passing through the atmosphere, Kale's flight speed decreased by another level. He was like a huge eagle soaring in the sky and looking down. The planet was full of green mountains and clear waters, and hundreds of flowers were blooming. At a glance, it was a beautiful scene full of vitality. But once he thought of the wreckage of countless creatures buried under this beautiful scene, and perhaps the corpses of Lucy and Logan, Kale's eyes were as cold as ice. Hopefully Lucy and Logan are still alive. Otherwise, who cares about the Sky God race, not to mention the entire life planet? Even this galaxy will be burned by Kale's anger. According to the tracker prompt, Kale found the space warship where Star-Lord was staying in front of a palace garden on the planet. Kale maintained stealth and approached the side of the palace. His ears suddenly moved, and with his ultra-sensitive hearing, he heard the conversation between Quill and Igo, as well as the voice of a maid. Master Igo, Master Quill, tea is here. Okay, you can go down. Without my order, don't disturb our father and son reunion. Yes. After the conversation ended, with the sound of light footsteps, a snail woman wearing a maid's skirt with 2 tentacles on her head walked out. She held a shower and scissors in her hand and came to the garden outside the palace and began to take care of the flowers and plants. Kale, hiding in the corner of the palace, looked at the snail maid, and the tall figure disappeared into the shadows again. The snail maid hummed a tune and watered the flowers. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the flowers, and an orange kitten lazily poked its head out. Oh my God? Little guy, where did you come from? I've never seen you before. The snail maid was surprised at first, then she put her finger in front of her lips, glanced at the palace building behind her, and whispered anxiously, "Don't make a sound. If Master hears it, you will be in danger." The little orange kitten's eyes widened and he tilted his head doubtfully. The snail maid's heart melted. She put down the shower, squatted down, and reached out to the orange kitten. Good boy. Before the snail maid's hand fell on the fur, The little orange kitten suddenly opened his mouth exaggeratedly and swallowed the snail made into his mouth, and then ran out of the garden without looking back. A few kilometers away from the garden palace. When the little orange kitten spat the snail maid on the grass, the snail maid coughed and opened her eyes, and Kale stood in front of her and looked down at her. The snail maid hugged her chest in fright and shrank into a ball. "Who are you? Outsider? You're the maid that Howard was talking about, right? 5 years ago you helped him escape from this planet?" Kale said calmly. If it wasn't for this reason he would have used venom to forcibly extract the maid's memory. The snail maid heard the name Howard and immediately let out a sigh of relief and asked, "Are you his acquaintance?" "That's not important. Now you have to answer my question first." Kale clenched his fists and said, "Are Lucy and Logan still alive?" Chapter 4:15. Planet Igo on the other side of the garden palace. Compared to the plains that were full of flowers and plants, this was a completely different scene. The ground was barren and the dark brown surface was full of dry cracks. There were only dead trees scattered here and there, and the leafless withered branches were like the hands of an old man reaching for the sky. At the end of the barren land, there was a large active volcano. It was like a giant beast lying on the ground. The heat in the air could be felt from a few kilometers away, and the sky above the volcano was filled with dark clouds. No life would set foot on this land of death, but today was a special exception. Is this the place? Kale looked at the active volcano in front of him and glanced at the planet snail maid, who was fidgeting with her fingers. "Yes, I'm not sure if Ms. Lucy and Mr. Logan are still alive. But 5 years ago, after the battle between Master Lucy and Logan, an active volcano suddenly formed here." The snail star maid stepped on the edge of the grassland and looked at the dark brown dry land with fear. Her face was pale as she said in a low voice, she said with a pale face, "After Master returned to the palace, he strictly forbade any creatures from coming close to this area. If he found out, he would feed them to this planet as fertilizer. There must be a reason for this." Kale narrowed his eyes. After thinking for a while he took out a creature card and summoned it. A mist-like creature appeared in the air and circled around Kale. It said respectfully, "Pride obeys your orders, Master. Pride, look after her until I come back." Kale pointed at the planet snail maid. "Yes, Master." Pride replied coldly and wrapped around the planet snail maid. The planet snail maid waved her hands in panic, but she couldn't touch Pride's spirit body, let alone drive it away. "Don't worry, as long as you don't try to run away it won't hurt you. Instead it will protect you." After Kale finished giving his instructions he took a step forward. As his body circulated the merged energy, he immediately flew toward the volcano's crater. The active volcano was at least 1,000 meters above sea level, and the diameter of the crater was nearly 300 meters. Close to the edge of the crater, the temperature in the air was already scorching hot. Ordinary creatures couldn't even get close to it. However, no matter how high the temperature was, it did not make much of a difference to Kale. His divine power was of the fire element, and with the energy he absorbed from the space gem, he could travel freely even in the harsh environment of outer space. Kale landed on the edge of the crater and looked down at the belly of the mountain, which was dozens of meters deep. Inside the crater there was hot lava bubbling and smoking. Some pebbles were kicked down by his shoes and were immediately melted into wisps of smoke by the lava. There are no signs of life within the range of the volcano. Vice activated his sonar scan and said, "Master, could it be that this active volcano was created when Lucy and Logan fought against Igo?" Kale shook his head gently and judged, "Let's not talk about whether Lucy and Logan have the ability to do so. Igo, who is the body of a planet, can repair the terrain at will. This active volcano was obviously created by him. Then why is he doing this?" Wei Si was a little surprised, like a human. "To cover up the things that exist here. Let's go down and take a look." Kale's eyes were bright. Without any hesitation he circulated the merged energy again. The surface of his body seemed to be propped up with a protective shield, and just like that he jumped into the lava of the crater. What? The high-temperature lava splashed. Kale, who had his own light source, seemed to be diving deep into the water, sinking deeper and deeper into the crater of the volcano. After descending for about a kilometer, which was the bottom of the crater, Kale felt that the temperature of the lava flowing around him began to drop slowly. In the end, it became as cold as water, and the distance that he could see was continuously extending. That's... Kyle's eyes suddenly widened. Under the lava of the volcano, he saw a small mountain floating up and down. The mountain wasn't made of rock, but was made of almost translucent blue ice. Under the active volcano there was actually an iceberg hidden. On the grassland outside the volcano, the star snail maid was sitting on the grassland. Her body was stiff and she did not dare to move. Pride was sitting on her neck. After Kale left, the two did not communicate at all. The star snail maid carefully turned around and looked at Pride again. That long black mist-like spirit body, she asked weakly, "Can you talk? A snail-like lowly creature like you is not worthy to talk to me." Pride sneered coldly and snorted. "I'm not a snail." The star snail maid was speechless. This spirit body guarding her was indeed as arrogant as its name suggested. "Only Master has the right to talk to me," Pride said coldly. "Aren't you talking to me right now?" The star snail maid was speechless. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but suddenly, the ground started to shake violently. The dark clouds in the sky were shattered inch by inch. It was as if the entire planet had started to shake. The change came quickly and it also stopped quickly. In just 3 seconds, everything returned to normal. Pride said to himself, "Just now, I could clearly feel that a powerful energy came from the other side of the planet." "Yes, Master." The star snail maid's face was pale and she confirmed, "His plan worked. The second sky god is finally going to awaken." The second sky god? While Pride was confused, the ground shook slightly again. This time, the source of the tremor came from the crater of the volcano. Red lava gushed out from the crater of the volcano, and then an iceberg rose to the sky. It was not until the iceberg completely separated from the belly of the volcano that a bit of starry light appeared at the bottom of the iceberg. It was Kale who was running the merged energy. He carried a small iceberg that weighed a few thousand tons and flew out of the crater of the volcano, towards the grassland where the star snail maid was. Boom! Kale slowed down and landed on the grassland. When he put the iceberg on his shoulder on the grassland, the ground around him shook. Then, with the iceberg as the center, a bone-chilling cold spread out and covered the area within a few hundred meters with a thin layer of frost. "It's so cold." The star snail maid trembled and took a few steps back from the iceberg. When she saw the blue body of the iceberg, she was suddenly stunned. There was a woman inside the iceberg. Kyle placed his palm on the iceberg and felt the coldness. His heart was burning with joy. He looked up at the iceberg in a daze at the familiar figure sealed in ice. She had blonde hair that reached her waist, snow-white skin, delicate and flawless facial features, and a faint smile on her face. She was wearing a white outfit and she looked like an angel, just like half a century ago. Kale's thoughts drifted away. He rubbed the iceberg and exclaimed, "I finally found you, Lucy." Chapter 4:16. When Kale placed his hand on the ice, the smart watch that Vice transformed into shot out a blue X-ray laser to perform a preliminary scan on the ice mountain that was about the size of a 5-story building. Vice soon provided the relevant information. "Master, this ice mountain is not normal. The texture of this iceberg is not ordinary ice, but solid ice that has been frozen for thousands of years. However, such an iceberg should have gradually melted with the passage of time in the high-temperature lava of the volcano, but this iceberg is directly immune to the high-temperature corrosion of the lava. This is a little too strange." "Can you detect Lucy's vital signs?" Kale asked. That was what he was most concerned about. "Well," Vice said awkwardly, "the ice is too thick. It blocks the laser from scanning. I can't detect the living thing inside the mountain." At this moment, the snail star maid exclaimed. A cloud of black mist rushed forward and said respectfully to Kale, "Master, maybe I can try." Kale nodded. Pride immediately flew into the air and crashed into the outer layer of the ice mountain. However, its spirit body directly penetrated the ice and swam to the side of Lucy, who was in the middle of the ice mountain. After circling around a few times, Pride returned to Kale. Pride explained, "Master, the woman inside the ice mountain is still alive. It's just that she's in hibernation. Under the instinctive defense mechanism, her body is faintly glowing with extremely cold energy. This entire iceberg should be caused by her body's emergency response." "Ice-type energy?" Kale mumbled to himself and then shook his head with a smile. It seemed like he was not the only one. After leaving Earth, even Lucy had some opportunities to enter the path of evolution. The rich relied on technology while the poor relied on mutation. There was another meaning in this sentence. It meant that anyone could become a superhuman. The Marvel Universe was a world full of miracles and wonders. "Master, do you need me to transform into my Transformer form and cut open the iceberg to save Miss Lucy?" Vice suggested when it saw that Pride had stolen its thunder. Don't. With your transformer mode, don't accidentally hurt Lucy. Kale shook his head decisively. He arrogantly stepped forward and took the opportunity to agree. That's right. This method is too barbaric. Vice was speechless. It was an intelligent mechanical life form, and its logic was a rational programming system. It was the first time someone had called it barbaric. All right, all of you step back a little. Let me do it myself. Kale waved his hand and said. Vice immediately turned back into a small robot and stepped back with pride. They stood together with the snail star made about 10 meters away from the iceberg. Kale took a deep breath and started to channel the fire energy that came from the genes of the Protoss. His body was suddenly surrounded by a faint golden flame. His left hand, which was pressed against the surface of the iceberg, became as hot as iron. Snail made, Weiss, pride, and fear retreated another 10 meters, but the originally cold and bone-chilling air also began to reverse the trend of the scorching hot summer. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. In the hands of Kyle, who had transformed into the god of fire, the 10,000-year-old ice that could not be shaken by the lava melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if a passageway leading to the belly of the iceberg had been opened. With his left hand in front of him, Kale melted the ice and started to move forward. Step by step he went deep into the iceberg. 10 seconds later, Kale was about 1 meter away from Lucy. Up close, Lucy, who was wearing a white dress, looked like a sleeping beauty sleeping in an ice coffin. Her long eyelashes, golden hair, white skin. Everything was frozen 5 years ago. It's time to wake up, Lucy? Kyle murmured softly. He controlled the fire energy with his left hand and melted the last meter of the ice barrier. The moment the ice melted, Lucy's body that was suspended in the air fell forward. Kyle restrained the fire energy on his body and held her in his arms with his open hands. He buried his face in her golden hair. The familiar fragrance drifted into his nose. It had been a long time. Kale smiled in relief. He hugged Lucy quietly and smelled her scent. It was as if he was willing to let time stop at this moment and last forever. Oh. Lucy's eyelashes trembled. She slowly opened her beautiful blue eyes. She realized that she was being hugged by a tall man. She instinctively wanted to break free, but her resistance stopped in the next moment. Kale, is that you? Lucy's voice was trembling. Although she didn't see the other person's face, the strength and gesture of this hug were no different from the person in her memory. If it's not me, who else could it be? Kale responded with a chuckle. After receiving confirmation, Lucy hugged him back. Her beautiful eyes were filled with faint tears. She sobbed emotionally, Kale, the universe is too vast and too dangerous. I'm afraid that I won't be able to return to Earth in this lifetime. I'm even more afraid that I won't be able to see you again. It's okay. I'm here. Everything is okay. Kale gently patted Lucy's back to comfort her. It was rare for him to show such a tender side of his. He had faced too many battles and slaughters, and only in front of his most important lover would he be able to once again feel that precious thing called emotion. The two maintained their hugging position. After a short reunion, Lucy suddenly remembered something. She hurriedly broke free from Kale's arms and exclaimed, "By the way, Kale, how long have I been sleeping in the ice?" Kale blinked and said, "As far as I know, it should be 5 years." 5 years? Lucy was shocked. She covered her surprised little mouth and said anxiously, "Oh no." Logan was taken away by God Igo. It's been so long. I don't know if he's still alive. Kale indeed didn't find any trace of Logan in the ice. He said in a deep voice, "Tell me slowly. 5 years ago, after Howard escaped from this planet, what happened to you and Logan? Also, why were you frozen in the ice and sank into the magma of the volcano?" Lucy took a few deep breaths. After calming down, she answered Kale's doubts one by one. It turned out that, when Lucy left Earth, she vaguely felt that there was an energy awakening in her body. In order to avoid worrying Howard and Logan, she didn't tell them about it. Lucy hadn't used this latent ice energy many times. It wasn't until 5 years ago, when she escaped from the God planet and was forced to fight with Igo, who was intercepting her, that the ice energy was fully used. Otherwise, with Logan's strength alone, even Howard wouldn't have had the chance to escape from the God planet. But despite the support of the ice energy, Lucy and Logan were still no match for God Igo. Logan was the first to lose consciousness. In order to avoid falling into Igo's hands, Lucy used the maximum ice energy to freeze herself. Lucy wrinkled her delicate nose, spread out her hands and said, "That's what happened. As for why the iceberg that froze me was put into the magma of the volcano created by Igo, I'm not too sure. Maybe I know. Kale smiled and looked at the blue ability card that was suspended on Lucy's body like a protective talisman. Maybe even Igo didn't expect it. In the world, there was actually a card ability that could passively make one immune to natural disasters. Elven protection. Chapter 417. When Kale came out of the iceberg, Lucy was already with him, holding his hand intimately. The two of them came to the grassland area where the snail star maid was. Greetings, mistress. Vice in the mechanical body and Arrogance in the black mist spirit body were both very tactful. They came to Lucy one after another and bowed respectfully. Good. It must be hard to take care of Kale. Lucy smiled and nodded. After greeting Vice and Arrogance, she was still as lively as before. She playfully winked at Kale. It seems that you have taken in a lot of family members again. Kale smiled but didn't say anything. He looked at the snail star maid with a serious face. She seemed to have something to say. Isn't this little Mantis? Lucy saw the snail star maid and walked forward. She held her hand and said, Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, we might not have found out the truth hidden on this planet. Lucy, it's great that you are okay. Mantis smiled sincerely. Lucy asked Kale, Kale, you didn't bully little Mantis, did you? Although she is God Igor's servant, in fact, she is very kind and pure. Back then, she was the one who secretly told us the truth and helped Howard escape. Of course not. Kale answered calmly. This was the truth. It was just that he let the devouring soul beast eat her once. Really? Lucy looked at Mantis's nervous little face and showed a doubtful and cute expression. Mantis quickly shook her head and said anxiously, Okay. Miss Lucy, Mr. Kale is very good to me. Now you must leave this place immediately. What happened? Seeing Mantis's high tension, Kale couldn't help but look at Arrogance, who was outside just now. Master. Arrogance saluted and quickly reported, Shortly before you entered the volcanic hinterland, there was a powerful awakening energy, and the aftermath covered this entire life planet. That's the awakening of the second god. Picking up its unfinished words, Mantis said with fear, Master Igor has been secretly searching for his descendants, Star-Lord Quill, who were lost outside the universe for more than 10 years. Now, with his help, Quill has awakened the divine power hidden in his body. Is his plan about to start? Kale had listened to Howard's analysis from beginning to end and he knew what this meant. Mantis nodded. Yes, as long as Master Igor's power in Quill's body, the seeds will be planted on thousands of life planets. And the seeds will quickly take root and germinate, swallowed all the resources on the planet. And when Lucy heard this, she couldn't help but look at Kyle anxiously. What should we do? It's very simple. Just don't let him have the chance to grow the seeds. The serious situation was imminent, but Kale was still calm. He looked at the sky on the other side of the planet and said with emotion, It's just that I didn't expect that even if I left the Earth, I would still have to fight to maintain the safety of the Earth. This may be the symbol of peace, the fate brought by the title. At this moment, on the other side of the planet, under the surface of the Garden Palace, there is a primitive cave here. The ground is covered with luminous moss, and the roots of the trees are intertwined to form the wall. Although it is a closed underground environment, the air is smooth and fresh, with a faint floral fragrance. Igor, wearing a silver uniform, retracted his hand from Quill's chest. Quill's body glowed with a little starlight and soon returned to normal. Quill, how do you feel? Igor looked at Quill with a smile on his face, and his eyes contained a deep sense of expectation. I feel like I can kill Ronan with one punch. Quill opened his eyes, clenched his fists, and then spread his hands and said, I'm kidding. I feel that my physical attributes have increased several times, and it seems like I can control the things around me at will. As Quill spoke, he waved his hand at the tree roots. As the blue energy radiated, the tree roots that formed part of the cave wall immediately moved rhythmically like living snakes. This is the power of our celestial god race. Igor raised his head arrogantly and opened his hands. He said, We celestial gods are above all living things and races in the universe. You are still not familiar with this awakened power, but when you use it in the future, you can create a planet under your own control. Not to mention a mere Ronin, you can even smash a creature stronger than Ronin into pieces with one punch. Is that so? Quill lowered his head and looked at his palm. It was unknown what he was thinking. Okay, I have to go do something first. You stay here for a while. I have something important to tell you later. Igor was a bit impatient. After waving his hand, His body quickly merged into the tree root wall and disappeared completely. Quill felt very bored. He sat on a chair woven naturally from tree roots and played with his newly awakened celestial god ability. It's a bit interesting. I can control more than just tree roots. I feel like I can freely explore and control any corner of this planet. Quill took a deep breath and began to explore the cave he was in. As soon as his mind penetrated 10 meters into the ground, he was shocked. There was actually a mysterious person even deeper underground. Quill thought for a moment and imitated Igor. As the soil wriggled, his entire body sank into the ground. He fell 10 meters and finally sat down in the lowest level of the cave. Pain, pain, pain. Quill climbed up from the ground and hugged his butt with both hands. He raised his head in pain and looked forward. He saw that in the depths of the cave on the second underground floor, there was actually a human-looking male savage trapped. The male savage's back was tightly pressed against the wall. His limbs and head were tightly wrapped by tree roots. His whole body was as dry as firewood. His black hair and beard were abnormally lush and exuberant. It was obvious that he had been trapped here for some time. His ragged white clothes had turned from white to grayish-black. The savage's head was tilted to one side and he remained unconscious. What was even more shocking was that several tree roots had pierced into his heart, as if they were constantly sucking his blood as nourishment. Why do I feel like I've seen him somewhere before? Quill looked at the savage's face. His hair covered most of his face, but the more he looked, the more familiar he felt. Out of curiosity, Quill could not help but move forward. He approached him and reached forward, wanting to push the savage's drooping hair away. The moment Quill's hand touched the hair, the savage suddenly woke up and trembled all over. He opened his mouth and let out an angry growl. Under the strength of his body, the tough tree vines were stretched to the limit. Quill was shocked and hurriedly stepped back. Then he saw the savage instinctively raise his hands. From his clenched fists, 3 sharp and cold steel claws stretched out. You are. Quill's eyes widened. At the same time he saw the other person's face clearly. It was a file photo that Kale once showed him on the electronic screen. Wolverine Logan. Chapter 418. In the cave at the bottom of the Garden Palace. Are you Mr. Logan? Quill looked at the struggling savage and couldn't help but ask. However, the barbarian couldn't hear him at all. Like a wounded beast, the barbarian had lost his human consciousness. The barbarian could only let out angry growls and reach out his hands with sharp claws, struggling with all his might. The tough roots and vines even left deep wounds on the barbarian's body. But the cage formed by the roots and vines seemed to be tailor-made for the savage. With his weak body, there was no possibility of breaking free. Mr. Logan, can you hear my voice? Quill suddenly remembered something and said, Oh right, do you remember Mr. Howard? He's the one who told us to save you. Hearing Howard's name, the savage suddenly raised his head. His bloodshot eyes stared at Quill in front of him, and he no longer roared angrily. Instead he only let out a weak whimper. Seeing a little reaction, Quill couldn't help but gasp and continued, Then do you remember Miss Lucy? She should have been left on this planet with you. All right, and Mr. Kale, do you remember the name Kale? When the savage heard the name Lucy, his face eased a lot, and the madness and wildness in his body gradually dissipated. When he heard the name Kale, the savage's face was slightly stunned, and then his body trembled violently again. When Quill thought the savage had lost his mind again, the savage suddenly said in a hoarse voice, How, do you know that name? You really are Mr. Logan. Quill took a deep breath and replied, You don't know. Mr. Kale came to the Milky Way Alliance to look for you. Later we met Mr. Howard. From him, we learned that you and Miss Lucy were left on this planet 5 years ago. Is that so, Master? He came to look for me? Logan muttered to himself. Bloody tears flowed out from his dry and sunken eyes. Quill comforted him, Don't worry. He should come to this planet soon to save you. No. Logan's hair stood on end as if he had been provoked. He hastily said in a hoarse voice, Don't let him come here. It would be dangerous to stop him. It's very dangerous here. Uncle, you're already in this state, yet you still have the mind to care about Mr. Kale. Quill spread out his hands and said bluntly, I can't do it. Let's not talk about how I can dissuade Mr. Kale. With Mr. Kale's tyrannical temper, if he knew that you were in this state, he would probably trample this planet to pieces. Let me save you first. Quill opened his palm, and with the power of the God of Heaven, a blue light illuminated the entire cave. The roots and vines that were wrapped around Logan's body like iron chains began to loosen on their own. Logan fell from the wall and half knelt on the ground. Quill hurried forward to help him up. His withered legs trembled slightly. Logan stood up strenuously and thanked Quill. "Thank you. I haven't asked, who are you and why are you here?" I'm... Before Quill could answer, the clear sound of footsteps suddenly rang out behind him, causing his words and expression to freeze in an instant. Logan's sharp hearing had not deteriorated. When he heard the strange sound, he looked back with Quill, only to see Igo in a silver uniform looking at them with a gloomy face. "Igo." Logan was filled with endless anger. He subconsciously reached out his steel claws, but Quill was faster. He stepped in front of him and said to Igo, "He's my friend." "Friend?" Igo gave a faint smile and said coldly, "My son Quill. Did you know? 5 years ago, as an interstellar thug, he forced his way into my territory and killed countless kind native creatures." "Bah." Logan put his hand on Quill's shoulder and spat out a mouthful of blood. He then took a deep breath and reluctantly retorted, "Bullsh*t. Logan, except for accidentally killing my original family, and after being redeemed by the head of the Kale family, until now I've only killed villains who deserved it. And you, who treats all creatures as nutrients for the planet, who is the executioner, everyone knows." Both of them had their own opinions. Quill looked hesitant, as if he did not know who to believe. Igo looked at Quill quietly and said gently, "Quill, you have to be clear. I'm your family. The ones on your side are thugs who want to invade our home planet." Igo reached out his hand and said kindly, "Son, come here. Stand on my side. From bloodline to identity we are family." "Family?" Quill lowered his head and thought. He could not help but take a step forward. After his mother died of a serious illness on Earth, he had been wandering in the Milky Way Alliance for many years. He had been searching for the warm word family. Seeing that Quill was about to walk toward Igo, Logan said urgently in a hoarse voice, "Quill, right? Don't believe that bastard's nonsense. Your mother, Meredith, was killed by this seemingly benevolent father in front of you." Igo's expression changed slightly. Quill turned back and grabbed Logan's collar excitedly. He asked loudly, "What did you just say?" Logan said hoarsely, "I said your mother Meredith was killed by Igo." Igo came to the underground cave many times to show off his ambition and planned to devour the stars. He said that 20 years ago, he deliberately planted a tumor in your mother's body. He said that his so-called love with humans was only to produce descendants who could inherit the bloodline of the gods. After you were born, your mother no longer needed him. Your mother died of a tumor, right? After Logan finished speaking, Quill's face turned pale. He turned back to look at Igo and said coldly, "Is what he said true?" Igo sighed softly and said helplessly, "In fact, I wanted to wait until later to tell you slowly." "What? Why did you do that?" Quill clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. However, the stabbing pain in his heart was even more intense. "Son, you'll know in the future." Igu took a step forward and advised, "Our deity race possesses boundless vitality and power. Your mother is only a lowly human with a lifespan of less than 100 years. She can't be compared to us at all." "So you killed her?" Quill found it hard to accept. He looked at the approaching Igo and grabbed the laser pistol at his waist with both hands. He said furiously, "Stop right there. Also, don't call me son. You're not worthy." Igo stopped in his tracks. The warmth on his face dissipated and was replaced by emotionless indifference. "Forget it. I originally wanted to play the role of a benevolent father with you, but it seems there's no need for that now. You bastard." Quill quickly pulled out 2 guns, but before he could load, Logan cried out in alarm behind him, "Careful." In passing, he gave Quill a fierce push. Quill threw himself to the side and looked sideways. He saw that Logan's back had been pierced through by a green vine and protruded out of his chest. Scarlet blood dripped along the vine. "I'm going to suck out your blood, you barbarian human. In addition, Quill, the deity power in your body is also mine." Igo raised both hands. His body was faintly glowing with blue light, and his body was filled with the powerful might of a deity. He finally stopped acting and revealed his cold, cruel, and ruthless side of a villain. Chapter 419. Even though his upper body was pierced by the vines, Logan's expression didn't change much. It was as if he was already used to this level of pain. He forcefully stretched his left steel claw back and waved it with a little force, severing the tough vines. Plop. Logan knelt on the ground and retracted his claw with his other hand. He forcefully pulled out a section of the vines that remained in his body. Along with a large amount of blood splattering on the ground, a bloody hole was left in his chest. Due to the severe lack of nutrition, even the self-healing effect of the self-healing factor had become extremely slow. Mr. Logan. Quill was about to step forward to help Logan up, but just as he took a step forward, Logan weakly waved his hand to stop him. He said hoarsely, "Don't worry about me. Hurry up and leave this place, damn it." Quill clenched his fists. Without thinking too much, he turned around and rushed towards the wall at the side. Trying to run? Igo waved his hands. Instantly the entire cave trembled. The roots, vines, soil, sand, and stones all became living creatures and swept towards Quill's body. "Wah!" Quill exclaimed. A blue light energy appeared on his body. The god's power was like a protective shield. Everything that came close to him was automatically repelled. While Igo was in a daze, Quill took one last look at Logan and plunged into the wall. He quickly opened up a path to escape upwards. "I didn't expect you to grasp a little of the god's power so quickly. You're indeed my descendant. However, this entire planet is my main body. Where are you going to escape to?" Igo laughed coldly. He didn't care about the severely injured and weak Logan and chased in the direction Quill escaped to. In the luxurious hall on the first floor of the Garden Palace. Quill, who had escaped from the cave, was running towards the door with all his might. He wanted to go to the garden outside and activate his space warship to escape this godforsaken place. Rumble. As the floor in front of him split open, the soil caved in. Igo broke out of the ground and blocked Quill's path. "Listen to me. Quill, if you and I work together we can become the true master of this starry sky." Igo still wanted to try persuading him, but Quill didn't hesitate at all. He pulled out the dual laser guns at his waist and aimed them at Igo, who was his biological father. He pulled the trigger and a series of fierce shots greeted him. The concentrated laser beams landed on Igo's body, and part of his body instantly exploded and festered. However, there was no actual flesh and blood, only the pure blue energy structure within was revealed. It turned out that Igo's original body was a planet with life, and his human-like body was just an incarnation created through the power of God. There were thousands of such incarnations, and they were used to break through the boundaries of biological isolation, constantly mating and giving birth to descendants with the power of God. In other words, the damage and death of Igo's avatar could not directly affect his planet. "You killed my mother, you damned alien bastard." Quill held her gun and stared coldly at Igo's rotten human avatar. "I created you." Igo angrily switched the appearance of his avatar. His feet turned into a flow of lightning-like energy, which was transmitted down layer by layer, connecting to the core of his original body on the planet with life. The earth rumbled and trembled slightly. Quill instinctively turned around, but he was still one step too late. The enormous and terrifying day energy flow formed a giant spike that ruthlessly pierced through Quill's body from behind, lifting his body off the ground. Humans are indeed lowly creatures. If it weren't for the fact that among all the descendants, only you have inherited the only God gene, you would only be worthy of becoming my nourishment like those lowly creatures. And Yondu, I originally gave him resources to create the interstellar hunter fleet. He only needed to help me bring my descendants here. Who knew that Yondu actually secretly protected you and delayed me for more than 10 years? Igo's voice echoed in the palace hall. He used the power of God from his original body to repair his human avatar. He manipulated the raging energy flow in the hall and hung Quill in the air. He said ferociously, "But now, you'd better obediently become a rechargeable battery for me to use the power of God." Quill let out a tragic howl. The power of God sizzled out of his body, but it was all forcibly extracted by Igo's energy spike and turned into his own. Igu revealed a joyful expression. He could clearly feel that the heavenly God's power that was originally at a bottleneck in his body was being continuously replenished. He finally had enough energy to nurture the heavenly God's seeds planted on the thousands of life planets. Devouring the entire starry sky was just a matter of thought. I'm God. Before the smile on Igo's face could fully appear, the top floor of the palace suddenly burst open. In his widened eyes, a small space warship forced its way into the palace hall and crushed his human avatar into powder. The energy spike lost control and collapsed directly. Quill fell to the ground from the air. Just as he got up from the ground while covering his wound, he looked up and saw the space warship's hatch open. A bald man with dark blue skin walked out and snorted at Quill. "You rascal, you didn't say anything and just came here to die. I'm your guardian, did you ask me?" Yondu. Seeing the person who came, Quill felt warmth in his heart. He suddenly realized that he might not have no family. We have to get out of here quickly. Yandu looked around solemnly. The palace building was disintegrating, the earth was shaking, and the energy flow was raging everywhere. This was the precursor of Igo's original body being about to recover. No, we can't. Quill shook his head and hurriedly said, "The moment I awakened the power of God, I could sense that bastard Igo's brain center is in the core of the planet. We have to kill him to prevent him from continuing to harm the universe." Yandu looked at him with a serious face and questioned, "With our strength, how can we kill a planet?" "Then at least wait until I rescue Logan from this underground." Quill channeled the power of God with difficulty and touched the surface of the hall. Just as his consciousness penetrated a little, the chaotic energy and tremors in the hall suddenly stopped. "Did you do this?" Yandu asked inexplicably. "Of course not." Quill was also surprised. He continued to explore with a strange expression. He noticed something and said in surprise, "There's an external invasion and it's constantly digging under the planet. Igo is concentrating on dealing with it." Yandu was still confused. Quill said excitedly, "It's Mr. Kale, it's definitely Mr. Kale. Other than him, no one can make Igo treat it so cautiously and not have time to deal with us." Just as he said, at this moment, 1,000 meters below Igo's planet. Chapter 420. All the way down. Kale seemed to have turned into a stream of light under the blessings of the fusion energy. The soil, roots, stones, and even the hard metals and minerals under the surface of planet Igo were all separated and bounced away, not hindering his flight at all. 1 kilometer, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, it was clearly a magnificent planet of life, but at this moment, in front of Kale, it was as fragile as paper and could be torn apart with a single tear. This was to be expected. After all, after the fire god's divine power was mixed with the energy of the primordial stone, its energy priority was at the top of the universe. It was not something that ordinary energy or matter could resist. In the face of such a brainless attack, Igo, the planet's main body, finally panicked a little. It had to withdraw its consciousness from the Garden Palace and focus on dealing with the powerful enemy that was approaching. Kale clenched his fist in front and flew like a Superman. After penetrating a thick layer of the surface, the 30-kilometer underground was mostly hollow. Many fluorescent plants came into view. These roots and vines formed thin tubes, just like the capillaries in the human body. They were full of exuberant life force and extraordinary power. Kale hovered in this area. Vice, as a smart watch, flashed a faint green light. It whispered softly, "Is this the body of the dais? It's really a little disgusting. There are some radiation and biological signals intertwined here." Before Kale could speak, a faint black fog appeared on his body. The fog formed a mouth and nose, and it spoke in human language. "Master, I'll go down and investigate." "Go." Kale nodded slightly. Arrogance immediately left him and blew down like a gust of wind, disappearing into the shadows of the underground plants. Compared to the other 6 sins, arrogance was much more practical. Although it was a little cold and arrogant, it was diligent and efficient. Although it could not enhance Kale as a spirit without a body, it was not bad as an investigative subordinate. "Master, there's something over there." Vice was not to be outdone. It fully displayed its radio wave detection skills and gestured to a place not far ahead. Kale flew in that direction and saw that in the corner of the underground fault, there were moss and green plants. There was also a pile of white bones that belonged to different creatures. Vice projected a blue light beam and scanned the bones. Then he reported, "Boss, the genes of this planet have been detected from these bones. They are very likely to be the offspring of the natives or the incarnations of God Igo." "I'm afraid it's the latter. With Igo's inhumane and brutal nature, he probably wouldn't want his body to evolve into a native creature. It's just that I didn't expect that he would really transform into a different race and carry out crossbreeding. He even killed all the descendants who didn't inherit the power of the gods." Kale shook his head indifferently. This kind of behavior was already close to nature. It did not have any emotions that a living creature should have. Igo, who had self-awareness and was trying to devour the stars, was 100 times more inhumane than Thanos. Beep, beep. Vice suddenly warned, "Boss, there's a massive consciousness and energy complex approaching us." "I've already noticed it." "It's true. Speak of the devil." Kale looked sideways and saw that from the end of the underground fault space, a giant energy bomb that was as bright as day was flying towards them at an extremely fast speed. The energy bomb flew over the green plants and continued to absorb the energy overflowing from the ground. It continued to grow, and in the blink of an eye, it completely covered the vision in front of them. Competing with energy? Kale raised his eyebrows coldly. He did not dodge and instead opened his left palm in front of him. As soon as he finished this action, the energy bomb landed on his palm. The dazzling giant energy bomb stopped abruptly. Opposite it was the dazzling starlight in Kale's hand. It was the cosmic energy obtained from the origin stone of space. Bezis. The two extremely terrifying energies, one large and one small, intertwined and confronted each other. Just the slight residual power that leaked out crushed the surrounding soil into powder and turned the glowing green plants into ashes. How is this possible? In the depths of the planet, a giant human face formed by consciousness and energy was even more incredulous. It looked at the human youth who took the energy bomb head-on in horror. One had to know. That was not an ordinary energy complex. It was formed by the pure power of God and was comparable to the infinite power of nature. Even a planet would tremble under its attack. For tens of thousands of years, no creature on Igor could directly face this kind of world-destroying attack of Kami. Igor did not know that part of Kale's fusion energy originated from one of the 6 gems that contain the mysteries of the universe. It could even break through the defense net of the new star technology. The supreme intelligence of Kree tried to control it but could not succeed. Go away. Kale shouted softly. It was no longer limited to his left palm. Even his arm, body, and hair were entwined with the energy light. Dual star form. In just an instant, the balance between the two types of energy was broken. Kyle's left hand sank deep into the energy ball, and as his arm and wrist twisted, the energy ball suddenly twisted into a fried dough twist, and then burst open like a balloon that had inflated to its limit. Hum. The white tidal wave of the heavenly god's energy swept out in all directions. Everything within a radius of 1,000 meters was pulverized from the inside out. Kale, in his dual star form, put his arms in front of him and rolled up and down in the waves of energy. Whoosh! Kyle could vaguely see another ball of energy flying towards him at an extremely fast speed. He didn't have time to think too much and quickly kicked out. But before he could kick the energy bomb, the energy body automatically caved in and separated, forming a giant human mouth. It happened to bite Kale's left foot. Invader, I will turn you into fertilizer for this planet. At the same time, a powerful consciousness directly connected to Kale's heart roared. God Igor, the one who should die is you. You almost took away something important to me. Kyle's tone was cold. He raised his fist, which was wrapped in dazzling light, and punched out with a red beam of light. He directly blasted the energy body, biting his foot into 2 halves. I don't know you. Igor growled angrily. That's not important. What's important is that you're about to die in my hands. Kale couldn't care less about strategies, schemes, or methods. He didn't want to think too much about them. He just followed his anger and blood-boiling fighting spirit and circulated the surging fusion energy with all his strength. It coordinated and strengthened every inch of his steel-like muscles and wrestled with the powerful energy body formed by Igor's body without restraint. For a moment, undercurrents surged under the surface. With Kale and Igor's battle as the center of the storm, the shock waves transmitted upward could be felt even tens of kilometers away. Underground in the Garden Palace, Logan supported himself against the trembling wall. The cave had already begun to collapse and was about to bury him alive. Suddenly, a hand landed on his shoulder. Uncle Logan, quick, let's get out of this damned place. It was Quill who had returned. He struggled to control the god's power. While supporting the weak Logan, he opened up a path to escape. Chapter 421. Boom Boom Boom. At the main entrance of the Garden Palace, Star-Lord Quill and Yondu, one on the left and one on the right, supported the weak and seriously injured Logan, almost dragging him as they escaped from the ruins of the collapsed palace. In the process of escaping, the earth shook and the earthquake continued, making their evacuation extremely difficult. Gods are fighting, this is a fight between gods, let's get out of here quickly. Quill swallowed his saliva and said hurriedly. Didn't you awaken the power of the gods? Kill him. Yondu looked sideways at Quill contemptuously and curled his lips. Quill shook his head vigorously and said with a wry smile, how can I compare with that planet monster? You little monster. Yondu was just about to say something sarcastic when he suddenly looked up alertly and whistled a little. A dark red arrow suddenly flew out of the top of his head, dragging a tail-light trajectory and shooting towards the bushes in the garden ahead. It was obviously an ordinary arrow, but it was faster than a laser, and it was about to sink into the bushes in the blink of an eye. Hoo-hoo, the red arrow was still on the way when a white cold current suddenly blew in front of him, and the modified technological metal red arrow, along with the bushes, was instantly frozen into ice. Is there an enemy? Quill hurriedly stopped and carried Logan on his back alone so that Yondu could free his hand to deal with the enemy. Yondu frowned deeply and whistled again. This time the whistle was urgent and sharp, and the red arrow suddenly broke free from the ice, dragging a red arc of light, and returned to the empty palm of his hand. Who is it? If you don't come out, I won't be polite. What a powerful little red arrow. Following the crisp laughter that sounded like a bell, a blonde girl in a white dress walked out from behind the frozen shrubs. She looked like a forest elf. Yondu, don't do it. Quill stopped Yondu, who was about to whistle, and looked at the person in front of him again and exclaimed in surprise, "You are Miss Lucy?" "It was Kale who asked me to pick you up." Lucy chuckled, and Quill, who was carrying the injured Logan, trembled slightly and said with tears in her eyes, "It's great that you are still alive, Logan." "You too, Lucy." Logan raised his heavy eyelids and responded weakly. "It's all over." Lucy saw the scarred Logan and couldn't help repeating what Kale had just said. Quill couldn't help but ask, "Now, is it really Mr. Kale who is fighting Igo?" Lucy nodded and looked at the same time and said confidently, "Let's prepare the escape spaceship first. This planet is about to usher in destruction. At this time, under Planet Igo. Kale, who was wrapped in dazzling light energy, and Igo's head, which was a mixture of consciousness and energy, were launching a different kind of melee battle. Kale was like a little figure of light that had spontaneously combusted and sublimated. Every punch and kick of his, in addition to hundreds of tons of superhuman strength, was accompanied by a powerful and extremely destructive energy bombardment. The latter was Kale's greatest capital to be able to compete with God Igo. Igo's body was this planet, and under the premise of not destroying the planet, if he wanted to cause effective damage to it, he could only attack it through elemental and energy attacks. His punch was like the explosive power of a missile. Fortunately, the opponent was God Igo, otherwise no one would be able to withstand this terrifying offensive. The structure formed by Igo was blown up by Kale again and again, but it quickly reassembled as before. Igo really couldn't understand why a small creature like the other party could compete with him in his home ground, in a stellar-level energy battle. It didn't make sense at all. Igo roared angrily, opened his bloody mouth, and spat out a beam of energy light in the void, directly blasting Kale, who was in his double-star form, away. Kale kept rolling backward, smashing through the underground rock layers dozens of meters away. With the energy protecting his body, he got up again without any problem and bounced out. His body was like a cannonball that had been shot out, smashing Igo's structure into pieces once again. What a troublesome guy. In the hollow fault underground, countless chaotic blue natural energies, driven by God's will, reformed into a giant energy structure that was shaped like Igo's face. "You can't beat me in my home ground." Igo's structure hovered in the air, looking at Kale, who was panting and circulating with dazzling light, and said coldly, "How would I know if I don't try?" Without saying anything, Kale clenched his fist and swung it forward. Relying on his fist alone, he blasted out a miniature beam of scorching energy light, blasting a large hole in between Igo's brows. "Scratch an itch." Igo sneered. From all directions underground, the power of nature surged up endlessly, and the hole in the energy structure was repaired at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the energy structure was repeatedly attacked and even shattered countless times, as long as its foundation wasn't endangered, it was invincible, drawing on the energy of the planet's main body to infinitely repair itself. This was the terrifying aspect of a heavenly god. From the very beginning, Kyle wasn't fighting against a single creature. Instead, he was fighting against the natural environment and the entire planet he was on. Igo sneered at Kale. "In my territory I can't lose. I have the enormous energy of this entire planet, and the energy in your body will be exhausted at some point. How can you compete with me?" "Alright, you reminded me." Kale wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled faintly. "Indeed, no matter how many times I kill your energy avatar, it won't have any effect. So, I must target your fatal weakness." Igo's expression changed slightly, and he suddenly had an ominous premonition. At this moment, a cloud of black fog floated out rapidly from underground, approaching Kale slightly and transmitting its thoughts. Master, I've discovered the brain and consciousness center of this planet about 1,650 kilometers underground, as well as a living heart. A foreign life form's consciousness avatar? Igo's energy structure watched as the black fog creature approached Kale, and his heart couldn't help but be filled with shock. Just now, he had been focused on Kale in front of him and hadn't noticed the existence of another weak consciousness avatar. Yes, weak. To Igo, an evil spirit like Pride couldn't be more weak. After listening to the report, Kale nodded at Pride and replied telepathically. Pride clearly knew that they were in danger and immediately floated back to Kale. What is that? Igo asked in a low voice, completely different from his previous arrogance. The corners of Kale's mouth rose as he looked at the structure with a faint smile. He calmly asked, I want to know, can celestial gods bleed? If you don't, then it'll be difficult. I have a divine artifact that requires the blood of a celestial god. What do you want to do? Tell me. Igo's structure opened its mouth and spat out several dazzling energy beams. But this time, Kale didn't choose to take them head-on. Instead, he punched the ground, blasting out a black hole. The moment he dodged the energy beams, his entire body turned upside down and continued to dig deeper into the ground. He kept accelerating and burrowing deep into the ground. This time he didn't dig blindly, but moved forward at top speed as if he had a goal. This action completely exposed Kale's intentions. Igo's structure froze in place, then shouted in horror, wait, damn it. You can't do that. Chapter 422. You can't do that. You'll regret it. He ignored Igo's sharp roar that reached his ears and mind. Kyle's expression was indifferent as he maintained the twin star form. Under the guidance of the spirit of Pride, he quickly broke through layers of soil and penetrated all the way down through the rocks of the planet's hinterland, leaving behind a trail of holy, dazzling flames. Igo was right. Although the twin star form was almost perfect, it was a combination of first-rate energy and first-rate physique. It was an overload state. Even the current Kale could not enter the twin star form for an entire day. In the fierce energy battle just now, the energy in Kale's body was almost depleted, and his physical strength was severely depleted. If this continued, the winner would undoubtedly be Igo, who had stellar-level energy. He had to end the battle quickly. Kale narrowed his eyes dangerously. He rushed out of the underground vault in front of him. Suddenly, another structure of Igo appeared. It opened its mouth ferociously, wanting to spit out an energy beam to blast him back to the surface. But while it was still accumulating energy, Kale suddenly accelerated, using his body as a weapon and rushing straight into the structure's mouth. Buzz, terrifying energy exploded in the structure's mouth. The earth rumbled and trembled, and the rock and mud were annihilated inch by inch. Only Kale rushed out of the center of the explosion and continued to break through without any problems. 100 kilometers, 500 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers. Kale was like a swordfish, suddenly breaking free from the shackles of the earth and arriving at a vast, empty underground space of the planet that flickered with fluorescent light everywhere. Master, it's there. Pride's body in the form of a black fog surged out slightly, indicating to the front. Kale looked in the direction of the indication and saw that in the interior of the planet, countless green plant tubes with a diameter of more than 3 meters were connected to a dark blue metal mountain like dense blood vessels, transporting the energy and consciousness of the entire planet. The metal mountain seemed to have a life of its own as it pulsated slightly. Pride said coldly, the metal body protects something like a brain or a heart. It's the source of this planet's enormous self-life and consciousness. Master, there's no mistake. That's the fatal weakness of the celestial gods. That's easy. After listening to the report, Kale dashed forward and arrived in front of the metal in an instant. His fist, which was wrapped in a dazzling light of energy, smashed into the mountain. Boom. The metal mountain trembled violently, but there was only a slight dent in the shape of a fist. There was no sign of it breaking apart at all. Should I say as expected of a heavenly god? The skull is so hard. Kale's eyes narrowed. The toughness of the skull was much better than the energy protection net and physically strengthened steel plates of spaceships. It was only second to the vibra-gold metal that could deflect all physical attacks. If fists didn't work, then try something else. Kale thought for a moment and quickly pulled out a card that looked like a golden plate. He carried it on his shoulders with both hands and slammed it down on the metal mountain. Whoosh, whoosh, as soon as the ordinary flames on the plate came into contact with the metal mountain, they spread upwards. The metal that was only slightly deformed by the strike of the twin stars actually melted into molten iron at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's effective. The Eternity Fire is really something. Holding the golden plate with both hands, Kale blinked in surprise. The energy level of the Eternity Fire was definitely not inferior to the Cosmic Origin Stone. It was even more destructive than the energy he borrowed from the Dimension Gem. In other words, each Origin Stone had its own power and specialty. For example, the energy of the Dimension Origin Stone focused on teleportation and traveling speed. The energy of the Strength Origin Stone focused on strengthening the body and strength. When the Marvel Universe was first born, the world was in chaos. Then, the Big Bang formed the universe today. There were also 6 elemental crystals, which are now the Cosmic Origin Stones. The Eternity Fire, as the first flame of the universe, is also the divine weapon of other races. Is there any special connection between them? Kale murmured to himself, but he didn't stop what he was doing. He stabilized the plate and controlled the Eternity Fire appropriately. In the flame, the hard metal mountain gradually disintegrated into a hole leading to the inside. The Infinite Origin Stone wasn't the only one that contained the power of the universe. For example, the Eternity Fire that could burn everything, the Thor Hammer that could control lightning, the Carry Divine Weapon that could travel through space and so on. As the metal mountain burned and melted, the planet quaked and shook incessantly. The green plants that resembled pipes gathered energy and split into several Igo constructs, charging towards Kyle fearfully and angrily, intending to stop him from threatening the central hub. Troublesome. Kale frowned deeply. He couldn't free his hands to deal with it. Just as he was about to dodge, the ground above his head suddenly broke open. More than 10 red lasers blasted down and blasted one of the Igo constructs into pieces. That is. Kale and the Igo constructs looked up at the same time and saw a space warship diving down. Through the windshield of the cockpit, they could see Quill, Yondu, Lucy, and Sister Mantis in the pilot's seat. You guys really know how to join in the fun. Vice, go and help them. Kale looked at everyone and couldn't help but smile helplessly. After giving an order to Vice, he ignored the energy constructs and focused on breaking the metal mountain that was protecting the Empyrean's center. No problem. The electronic watch detached from his wrist. Vice transformed into a small aircraft and approached the space warship. Lucy, who was on the space warship, saw Kale underground and the Igo constructs beside him. With her experience, she immediately understood everything and hurriedly said, "Let's deal with those Igo avatars. Don't let them disturb Kale, who is attacking the center of the planet." Understood. Quill shouted loudly and pressed the button tightly. He fired a series of lasers at the energy constructs below. While attacking, he didn't forget to vent his anger and roar, "My biological father is actually this thing. I'm not human anymore. Damn it, Quill, Mantis, you traitors. I'm going to kill you." Igo saw the 2 people in the interstellar spaceship and couldn't suppress his anger. Even the only creature closest to him was standing on the opposite side. "If you want to kill them, you'll have to ask us first." Yondu and Lucy jumped down from the space warship's hatch. The former held a small red arrow while the latter flapped her frost wings and slowly landed on the ground from mid-air. "Igo, you've done a lot of evil. You should have met with this calamity long ago." Yondu's face was calm. He whistled and the small red arrow in his hand immediately flew out. It was like a tiny tracking laser bullet flying towards Igo's construct. "Do you still remember me, Uncle Planet?" Lucy stuck out her tongue and made a face. Then she opened her hands in front of her. The white cold air touched the surface and immediately froze into a sub-zero frost domain, freezing the transmission pipeline so that Igo couldn't use his full strength. "You 2 lowly creatures, I should have killed you long ago." Igo was indescribably angry. However, under the obstruction of the others, he couldn't attack Kyle anymore. He could only mobilize all the energy in this area, gathering it into a torrent of energy that was as bright as day and attacking wildly. On the other side, Kale opened a path with the eternal fire. After entering the belly of the mountain, what appeared in front of him was a giant brain that was thumping loudly. "It's all over, God Igo." Chapter 423. Planet Igo in the underground fault space thousands of miles below. Under Igo's rage, the entire planet began to gather energy towards the core, so that this area was like the center of a storm, with dozens of energy flows raging in it. "None of you can escape." Inside the eye of the storm, Vice merged with the space warship and transformed into a super-large transformer mode, firing laser cannons to resist the bombardment of the energy flow. Quill left the cabin and used his newly awakened divine power to pull and strip the planet's energy. Mantis also used his psionic ability to grab a transmission pipe, hinting that a structure incarnation fell into a deep sleep. Lucy and Yondu respectively relied on their own ice and arrow control methods to cut off the energy pipes one by one. Even so, Lucy and the others were still retreating in defeat. Soon they were practically huddled together with their backs against each other. Everything around them had turned into a vast ocean of energy that was drowning them. It's over. The endless energy flow converged into Igo's ferocious face, opening its glowing mouth and was about to blast out the energy cannons. But at this moment, the face's expression suddenly changed dramatically, and the energy flow that had transformed into a solid entity began to collapse outwards. How is this possible? No. Igo muttered to himself and then cried out in horror, staring at Quill in front of him with his empty eyes. Quill also lowered his head and looked at his hands. The divine power wrapped around his palms began to dim and was about to disappear. His power was inherited from Igo, and when Igo was about to die he would also lose the divine power. Quill took a deep breath, looked up and said coldly, "It's your end, Igo. You were created by me, and when I die you will also become immortal forever." Before Igo could finish his resentful words, the structure completely collapsed into a light mist. At the same time, the tremors underground became more and more intense, and the rock formations above began to crack and crumble. The center was destroyed and this planet would be destroyed. It's good to be immortal. Also, I found my family. Quill whispered to himself, glancing at Yondu, who had a relieved expression on his face. It seems that boss has succeeded. Vice stood beside everyone and blocked the falling rocks for them with his huge steel body. Following its words, a human-shaped dazzling light flew out from the metal mountain and stopped in front of everyone. As the intense light faded, the figure of Kale, who was wearing an interstellar spaceflight uniform, appeared. Kale. Lucy rushed forward in surprise and clung onto Kale's shoulder. Her delicate body trembled slightly as she said excitedly, "Logan, he's still alive and well. He's in the cockpit right now." "Is that so? I knew it. He's an immortal lone wolf. How could he die on this planet so easily?" Kale nodded his head in satisfaction. He then glanced at the others and said, "Let's get on the fighter and leave this place. This planet is about to be completely destroyed." Quill and Yondu looked at each other and said in unison, "Okay." Vice transformed back into the original fighter form and crawled on the ground. The cabin door opened automatically, allowing Lucy and the others to enter the cabin directly. "Rest in peace, Master." After the others boarded the fighter one after another, Mantis looked sad and finally looked at the lifeless metal mountain as a farewell. She then followed Lucy, who waved at her without hesitation. When everyone entered the cabin, the space fighter ignited and started. Towards the gap in the ground, more than a dozen red lasers were in front, rotating and cutting the underground passage as they left at full speed towards the surface above. 5 minutes later, a travel-worn orange-blue space warship left the skull-like crimson planet and made an interstellar jump to another galaxy. Not long after it left, planet Igo was reduced to nothingness in the universe after a series of explosions. In the cabin of the space fighter, Kale deactivated his double-star form. His breathing had turned from rapid to even, but his body was still emitting heat. Lucy hugged his shoulders with both hands. The two came to the seat where the unconscious Logan was half lying. This long-awaited reunion still made them feel absent-minded. "Vice, how is his body?" Kale looked at Logan carefully. His face was incomparably weathered, his hair was white at the roots, his body was as thin as dry wood, and the shocking penetrating wound on his chest. One must know that in front of him was a Wolverine with adamantium. From this, it could be seen how much suffering Logan had endured alone in the past 5 years. Understood. Vice came out from the inner wall of the space fighter. The small robot jumped onto the armrest of Logan's seat and used a medical laser to scan his body. It concluded, his body is seriously undernourished. Most of his self-healing factors are in a dormant state, but his life is not in danger. He just needs to be injected with nutrient fluids and rest for a period of time. That's good. During this time you will take care of him. Kale nodded and ordered. Yes. Vice accepted the order and jumped onto Logan's arm. It automatically transformed into an electronic watch to monitor Logan's physical condition at all times. "He'll be fine, Kale," Lucy whispered in Kale's ear. "Of course he'll be fine. In the future he'll still be my right-hand man, fighting and killing enemies for me." Kale smiled faintly and looked at the few people in the cockpit. He mainly said to Quill, Quill, I found the people I need to find. The matter that I asked you to do has been completely completed. You're free now, but before that you have to send us back to Beacon Star. Quill piloted the space fighter and replied heartily, "No problem. On that planet I promised Brown Bear and Gola to send them back. Now we're also heading in the direction of Beacon Star." "That's good." Kale calmed down slightly. This way, with the addition of the Soul Gem, this space journey could be considered complete. The time to return to Earth was just around the corner. Beacon Star. The sun had already set in the west, and the curtain of night shrouded the vast wilderness of the ruins of civilization. A dot of starlight lit up in the dark night sky and then enlarged into a bright disk. It was only when it descended to a certain height that it could be seen that it was a space fighter shining with light. Strange, this should be the location. Where's the building during the day? Did we go to the wrong place? Quill, who was in the main pilot seat, was deeply astonished. He piloted the space fighter and approached the surface. The bright light shone down, and what came into view was only a piece of civilization's trash and ruins. Something happened. Kale's face instantly turned cold. Without waiting for the space fighter to land, he quickly opened the cabin door and flew down with Lucy in his arms. They arrived at the sunken ground that still had some charred bricks and tiles. There was no mistaking it. This was the original location of Howard's building during the day. Oh my God. Piloting the space fighter, Quill cast the light into the distance. The few people who were still in the cabin couldn't help but gasp. Smoke was rising from the ground within a radius of 100 meters. It was obvious that an extremely cruel battle had taken place here. Corpses of monsters in steel armor were strewn all over the ground, and dark brown blood had dyed the ruined ground red. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.